Good afternoon. Oh, good morning, colleagues. We're about to start our conversation. Okay, I'm not the the convener of this workshop. Rather, Dr. Vanessa Brown is. I'm just doing the administrative work before she comes over. I would like to apologize for the delay in our starting. Life is, and since we're in an AI in teaching and learning in learning and teaching conference or workshop, perhaps we are to consider the fact that life can become so unplanned. And perhaps stuff like AI does come in and unplanned, and we now must consider how AI should work within learning and teaching. Okay, so we said we'll start off at like 9:30. Obviously, the program has moved around a bit because of the delays, but I'll ask Dr. Vanessa Brown, the director of APU, to introduce the points or the objective of the workshop, and then we can start off with our first speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Mfundo. And can I introduce Mfundo Zwani, new staff member at APU? Just joined us. So, and thanks for setting this up, Mfundo, with Khairuddin. So welcome everyone. I don't want to take too much time since we all know why we are here. Our goal is to eventually come out of these consultative processes with an approach to AI for the university. This is the start of the consultation. It was prompted, thank you, Juliet Stoltenkamp, by a draft set of guidelines and principles, and then SAP, Senate Academic Planning, decided that the route to go is to get a process for getting input from all our stakeholders. So this is the first part. We're getting all our faculties to contribute what they are already doing with regard to AI. The next step is to have another full day where we will have students present and other stakeholders, and get a task team together to be, crafting our first go at a holistic approach for the university. So welcome everybody. And I'm sorry for the late start, and without further ado, can I hand over to Prof. Levak to do the welcome?
Good morning. Thanks, Dr. Brown. You've actually done the welcome for me. I was given the route that we're taking, and I'm very pleased that we're having this engagement this morning, colleagues. Just so happens also it's my last engagement for the year, and I'm very, very happy that we've taken from SAP side a series of engagements, and this is one of our key priorities for the year. Even in my absence, whilst I'm urge our colleagues to ensure that as much and as possible and widely as possible, that we give our input into coming up with a kind of a framework that would really set not just the scene for UWC, but can also lead in the system. So I'm looking forward to all this morning, and I do hope that from the set of principles and guidelines that Dr. Stoltenkamp has already started with, and with all the future engagements, but before there will be a proper framework on how we will integrate AI into learning and teaching, and not as something that should be scaring us, but using innovative to also try and switch the. So with those few words, welcome everyone, and really looking forward to the engagement. Thank you so much, Dr. Brown and colleagues.
Thank you, Prof. Levak. I'm glad we recorded that. Thank you for those introductory words. We couldn't hear very clearly. I think it was still buffering on your side, but fortunately we have it recorded. But thank you for welcoming and introducing us to the space today. I'm going to call on the first presenter from the CHS faculty, Prof. Jennifer Chips, to get us started. Yes.
Good morning. I am Jennifer Chips. I am the Chair for Digital Health in the Faculty of Community Health Sciences, and I've been asked by our faculty to present just some of our thoughts about the impact of artificial intelligence in health professional education. In reflecting on the impact of artificial intelligence on health professional education, it's important to think about the duality of our role. First of all, we're responsible for the training of health professionals, so therefore there is an impact on education and students, but our students are responsible for the care of patients once they graduate and during their training, and there's also an impact of technology and artificial intelligence on their care. So for us, the challenge in looking at the impact of artificial intelligence is to think about how do we manage the space between technology and our clients. In the educational environment is how do we manage the space between all the technological developments and a student-centered learning approach, which then also translate to how in the patient environment do we manage the space between technology and healthcare practices while maintaining a patient-centered approach. What is this term artificial intelligence or AI? I think first of all I should start and say that I think it is important to think about artificial intelligence as the new electricity. Don't think about it as load shedding, but in fact how electricity is a daily part of our life, and this is what's going to happen to us as it is already happening in our phones and everywhere. It's becoming part of our daily life. But the term is very, very broad, and we use the term very, very loosely. So let's look at a definition. So artificial intelligence refers to techniques that are used to teach computers to learn, to reason, to perceive, to infer, to communicate, and to make decisions similar to or better than humans. But it does involve a whole range of different activities. It includes what is referred to as machine learning, where computers are learning from data, deep learning, which is learning from using neural networks to learn for tasks such as image recognition and speech recognition. This is used, for example, in translation. If you now go traveling, you can just point your phone and it will be translated for you. Or image recognition, as is done in some studies in fields such as cancer, imaging, etc. A lot of work is being done in artificial intelligence around natural language processing. And what this is referring to is the understanding and processing of human language. And what is very common in this, and you've seen the emergence of this, is chatbots or virtual assistants. For example, Meta has just been included in your WhatsApp that can respond to human language and give you answers. Language translation, which is a very important component. The area of robotics, where you have machines which can perform physical tasks autonomously. And then you have also expert systems that can mimic decision-making abilities of a human in a particular field. So it includes a whole range of different strategies. Now, as I was saying, it is a very big overarching term. But what we really want to do, and I think it's important just to simplify this really very simply down to sort of say, think about this process is, what do I want a computer to do, for example, X, Y, or Z, instead of me? Do I want the computer to be able to recognize an image? And so, for example, now when you open your computer or your phone, there's an image recognition that happens where you've taught the computer to recognize your face. Do you want the computer to do voice recognition, or do you want it to recognize a pattern? And once it can recognize this pattern, image, voice, you want it to be able to classify it. So for example, if it sees a picture of a cat or a dog, you want the computer to be able to classify this correctly as a cat or a dog. You want to be able to, for example, predict what will the weather be like tomorrow, what we would like to buy, or whether the picture is in fact a cat or a dog. So how is this done? And this is done through machine learning. Now, this machine learning can happen in a supervised way, and that is why we provide labeled data for the machine to learn, or unsupervised, where it is learning on a whole range of data that is available to them. So another way to think about it is that machine learning is based on a model which provides an answer when we enter data. So how well this model is trained depends on how useful it is for us. And To train this model, we have to put in data, which it can compare with. Then we have output data, which is pictures, for example, and let's look at pictures of a cat or a dog, which it then has to be paired with dog or cat, or it must a picture of a dog and anything else paired with a dog or not a dog. So you want it to classify that information. With the example that we have on our left-hand side, you want the computer to be able to recognize that not all of these pictures are dogs. And this is just to show you how challenging this task might be. And with this training of machine learning of computers, we largely use it for two kind of functions. And again, I'm really simplifying. There's the whole area of predictive artificial intelligence, where we want the computers to make predictions or classification based on label data. So this is supervised learning or training. So for example, you might want the predictions on students and students at risk. So the machine learning will happen on, for example, big data, where they would look for patterns to identify areas of risk and make predictions. Then there is the whole area of generative AI, and this is the new area that has actually brought up all this interest in artificial intelligence, the large language models such as ChatGPTs, etc. This is where you generate new data samples based on patterns it has learned from unlabeled data or unsupervised training. That is training on a whole range of material, which is not necessarily labeled and supervised. So people are starting to use the term ChatGPT, but what we are really referring to is a whole plethora or range of large language models that are currently being used in education. So what are these large language models? So they are natural language, general purpose, artificial intelligence text generators that are used to explain complex issues that assist us in researching information. And the way that it works is very similar to Google, that there is a prompt or a question, and it will provide an answer. And so these models are trained on unsupervised data, and it's trained on the entire public internet. And there's a whole range of them, and it is expanding so rapidly that it is really difficult to keep up to date. But these are just some examples, such as ChatGPT, Gemini, Palm 2, Llama, Bing, Copilot, Claude 2, and there's even one called Genie AI. But if you look at the picture on front of you here, what you can see is that there has been, this is March 2023, there is just a plethora of them, and the growth is quite exponential. So just a few examples how we have used ChatGPT, for example, or some of these large language models. On the one side, we were asking a question from Bing about the impact of AI on nursing education and how it will transform nursing education. And you can see that it rapidly provided answers about simulation training, learning pathways, collaborative learning, lifelong learning, and ethical and legal implications with some references attached. On the other side, it's ChatGPT. I was asking it again the same question. So here they were saying these are the top 5 issues for nursing education: privacy and security, ethical considerations, resistance to adoption, cost and technical expertise. And then it gave some additional references. So what you can see here is that it's a prompt with some answers that is received. But there are further uses for it, and it can provide you with a whole range of information, and the information that it provides you are only as good as your prompts. So here you can see a far more detailed question saying provide a list of potential nurse sensitive indicators that can be used for the dashboard in ICU that can enable lateral, vertical and longitudinal informational management and can facilitate decision making on operational, tactical and strategic levels. Include the formula, indicator and sources of data, and do this in a table format. So you can see the instruction is quite detailed, and that's one of the things that you'll hear, that the better your instructions and your prompts are, the better information you can get. And this is the information that was generated. Now, of course, a great anxiety is about how good these large language models are in writing assignments. So here I asked it to write a motivation for decolonization and transformation of nursing curricula. and to discuss these considerations on the following with reference to decolonization and transformation, and I gave it 4 dot points to respond to. And this was actually an assignment in a nursing education program. And this is what it came up with. It actually wrote in essay format a response addressing the dot points specifically. And this is actually one of the reasons that people are getting quite concerned, is that these large language models are quite effective and efficient in actually writing essays. But as an educator, there are other ways that it has also been used. Here, for example, asked ChatGPT to develop a marking grid for an essay on nurses' responses during COVID. So you can see the marking grid is there. It gives introduction, conclusion, and overall score, and mark allocation for the different parts. And in fact, an essay was actually put into ChatGPT, which it then marked, and this was the actual marks that was given. Now you have to remember, anything that you actually upload into the language model also becomes part of its learning. This is now where all the anxiety around this has emerged, because if these large language models are so effective and efficient in writing essays, how do we guarantee the integrity of the academic work of our students? So one of the big things that people have originally got very concerned about is about copying and pasting. And my opinion about it is that, I mean, copying and pasting has been around forever and a day. And in fact, people will probably continue to copy and paste. And it is our responsibility as educators to actually instill a sense of ethical learning, whereby the student recognize that actually copying is cheating on themselves in their learning process rather than benefiting from it. But because of all of the concerns around it, a whole range of plagiarism and now artificial intelligence detectors are being developed. Turnitin has been adapted, and you can see there it says a statement how much of the submission has been generated by AI, and it says 48%. And then there's also CopyLeaks, which is a plagiarism and AI content detector report, which also give a more detailed issue of AI. Now, there are a number of issues around these plagiarism and AI content detectors. One of this that you have to be aware of false positives in the originality results. It is very important, I think, in general, as a general rule, that for their working with these large language models, is that you have to always use your own critical thinking ability to engage with the material. We have had situations where it has come up with a very high score, but in fact it's checked and it was not actually AI generated. And there's also been cases where you in fact can instruct a large language model to write an essay so that it cannot be detected as a artificial intelligence generated essay, by giving it an example of your own writing style that then can then mimic, because obviously the writing style that it generates is not necessarily similar to the students. But I do think that it is an area that we have to engage with. We have to think about whether writing assessments are the only way to go, and whether we need to move towards oral assessments. I think there's important issues for policy guidelines for the institutions, as like, for example, what level of originality would be acceptable, 15% or 25%. Whether all assignments need to be submitted via an originality checker, and whether, for example, it is done as part of a learning exercise and how it's being used. So in all of this activity that's going on and starting to use plagiarism detection for artificial intelligence, how do we prepare our faculty? How do we get our faculty ready for this that is happening? And I think the first area is that we have to actually raise awareness in the faculty about the use of large language models. First of all, for example, you must be aware of hallucinations and limitations. It is well aware that sometimes what happens when you ask a question, what is generated is actually not accurate. So these AI hallucinations are referred to as incorrect or misleading results that this AI models generate. These areas are caused by a whole range of factors. It could be insufficient data training, incorrect assumptions made by the model, or biases in the data used to train the models. And there's an interesting article written on it. But it is important to actually always critically engage what is being generated by the material. I asked it some questions about a screen for cardiovascular training, and I was looking for a screen that you could use for cardiovascular screening that did not require taking a blood pressure or any physical measurements, and it kept on giving me the same answer, which was incorrect. So when you're an expert in a field and you engage with the material, you can often see the limitations of the material that is generated. So that's the first step. But I think the second thing is that we have to facilitate the appropriate use of it in education. It is going to be used, and because it is going to use, we have to assist the educators to use it to improve the quality of educational content. So we've got to teach students and learners how to use it. And what is core to that is learning to ask good questions. You know how they say rubbish in, rubbish out. If you ask a poor question, you might not get the right answer. If you can learn to ask a really good question, you might get a much better answer. So the issue of technology literacy of our students and our staff becomes very important. And as educators, I think we have to actually think about how we can integrate it into student group work. And there's further examples today in presentations from people where they actually show you how they've used it and integrated it into their student work to look critically and to critique the work generated by the large language model. The third point actually is I think that we must monitor the information that is produced. Because of these hallucinations and because of its limitations, it can lead students astray, and they might learn thinking that that is the full answer. We have to make people aware of the privacy and security issues around that. And there is inherent bias in these models, because if the training is done on models that have got inherent biases, for example, if you have a big data model that is trained on Western data pictures, it might not be appropriate and might even be inaccurate for application in an African context. So you need to really be aware of bias and the quality and accuracy of the information. And then, very importantly, if you're in the health professionals field, you very quickly become aware that it lacks clinical context and judgment, although it is getting better all the time. Then the other area, I think, is that we have to get up to date with new innovations, and these things are just changing rapidly as we speak. There's talks about adaptive learning management systems being developed, which can diagnose gaps in knowledge of students, personalize feedback back to students, facilitate student collaboration. There's papers around intelligent tutoring systems or teacher bots that can assist students in studying. So there's a whole range of innovations that emerges all the time, and it is important that we provide some guidance to the staff and students out there as to what is appropriate or good to use. Central to all of this discussion for me is the issue of ethical learning, and I think that we should focus on ethical learning, which is a culture of learning where students recognize that the learning is for themselves and their own self-development, not just for examinations. And so we have to ask questions whether are students learning well with these models? Can it, and I think it's very important for us to assess that. And there has been research that says it can assist students in research and writing. And this brings about a lot of debate around the issue of writing and whether these large learning models will actually replace some of the writing skills developed by students. It can facilitate group and remote learning, and it can empower students with disabilities, for example, with speech-to-text translation. But I think central to this is that we need guidance for students. We need to have guidance about what to use at the university, and it should be used as an additional tool in learning. I think we have to encourage the referencing and disclosing the use of large learning models. This is already being done by papers. A lot of journals are asking to declare the use of artificial intelligence, and we have to modify the work generated by these large language models. And then we have to ask the questions, if work produced with significant help from these models can we still consider that learning? And I think there's a lot of discussion that have to be done around the issue of assessment adaptation. I've already mentioned that there might have to be, specifically in our field, some movement back to oral examinations of vivas. But there's also positive effects where, you know, there are systems that can easily automate marking with adaptive feedback that can significantly reduce the load of lecturers. And along with this comes a number of future innovations to improve education administration efficiency. There's tasks that can be performed by the AI, administrative tasks, such as marking and grading, and one of the later presentations will actually show you an example of that. It can also help learners to build personalized learning plans, identify their learning needs and styles, and provide timely and personalized feedback to students. Then there's a whole area of data mining to evaluate teaching and evaluate academic performance, and this can be done via prediction. So this could facilitate admission decisions, course scheduling, dropout retention monitoring, and models for student achievement and success. So the issues I've discussed up to now are largely quite generic, but I do think that there are some specific issues for us in the Faculty of Community Health Sciences. And one of these areas which goes alongside with the development of artificial intelligence is actually the use of augmented reality and virtual reality that are now enhanced with artificial intelligence in simulation. These are just some of the examples of augmented reality and virtual reality activities that are currently happening within the community health sciences space, with examples of wound management there and an emergency trolley. But there are also enhanced artificial intelligence high fidelity mannequins for simulation, although I've had some feedback that it will take some further development for these mannequins to provide useful feedback. And there's another area, and I'm not going to focus too much on it because this is about education today, but part of what we are doing in the faculty is we have to prepare our students for the use of artificial intelligence in clinical practice. And these are just some examples currently, which just to give you some idea, and it's very little big data that has been used, for example, for the decision on the identification of cancer. There's an example of the Yale New Haven Hospital Nursing Index, which used the Rothman Index, a tool that reflects patient acuity and risk. And you can use AI to determine avoidable readmissions, and this is a current project that we are working on. Then there are a whole range of artificial intelligence tools for research. It can help you lead to sources, it can help you summarize, it can help you brainstorm ideas, it can help you find connections between papers. There are research assistant tools like Elicit, there's smart citation tools, there's AI-powered research tools like Semantic Scholar. Even our data analysis tools such as Atlas TI cameras are integrated with artificial intelligence. Otter AI, which can help you take minutes, although you're not allowed to do that without declaring it in a meeting. And then with Covidence, with systematic reviews, we believe that is coming as well. But there are, among all of these issues, there are two big issues. First of all, they are not, most of them are not open source, they're costly. And I think this is an issue the university has to deal with because you can only use a little bit and then it asks you to buy a license. And then the issues of rigor. How do we deal with issues of rigor? In something like Covidence AI. I got a query by a student as whether they could use Otter AI for their interviews, for their research, and there are major issues about ethics and data security in doing that, and I would not recommend it. How is AI going to change our education in practice? I think, and this is just in summary, we must remain aware of the biases and fairness in these data sets. Most of them have been trained in Western data sets, and there has to be algorithm transparency for us to know. A big concern for me, the second point, is the improving of our digital literacy of the education and professional health workforce. Thirdly, we must consider the ethical implications of artificial intelligence. There are issues of privacy, what your type of your data is stored in OpenAI. There's accountability, there's transparency, there's a need to declare it. Improved access is an issue. We have to focus on facilitating ethical learning in students. And then lastly, where I started off, I think we have to really think about How do we balance the space between technology and our students and our patients? So to conclude, change is unavoidable. I believe that we have to be early adopters, we have to ride the wave, we have to become thought leaders in AI, in nursing, and in the other health professionals, and we must learn and engage with this technology to manage the space between this technology and client patient-centered care. Thank you very much. And some references for interest.
Good morning, everybody. Conrad Potberg, the law faculty. I was a bit slightly unsure of the scope of the presentations for this morning. There was nothing wrong with the brief that was provided, but so I might have started a bit over, or at least very basic, and I'm going to skip the basics because I'm sure most of us understand what AI is. But we're going to look from, I'm going to speak about what we do in the law faculty and our approach to, or our considerations regarding AI. So we all know that AI is basically just let me just put everything up at once. Okay. Refers to the simulation of human intelligence, and this can be done using various tools like chatbots that can answer questions for students. And we're more concerned in the faculty about integrity, or the academic program and the integrity of the academic program. So students tend to use AI for just to solve problems quickly and not. Now, I also want to say, use this word very cautiously, that they're lazy. They take it exactly as it is without engaging with what they got from the AI. And we're saying we're not opposed to AI in the faculty, but we're opposed to using the AI's work exactly as it is without actually verifying the information that they've provided. Because in the law faculty, we've actually had it in the profession where we had a lawyer that was quite lazy, not UWC lawyer, that used ChatGPT or Google to make up cases, to cite cases. It was recent, I think it was last year or the year before last. And when the opposition tried to verify these case or the case law that was being used, they couldn't pick it up anywhere. So AI has its benefits, but it's also still developing, and that we need to be aware of. So how can we use it in legal education itself? Now, I've encouraged colleagues in the faculty to embrace AI and not the broad concept of but not them themselves. Ask AI to draft the contract, right? Once they've gotten or received the actual contract from the AI, from ChatGPT or Copilot or Gemini, you then go and explain the requirements of the contract. And then then the students can, using these requirements, determine whether that which the ChatGPT or the AI has developed meets the requirements in law. That would be the learning process for the student. Instead of saying, draft, okay, these are the requirements for a contract, list them, and now you go and draft the contract. So what the student does is goes and has the requirements and just asks ChatGPT to draft the contract without actually going through the process of checking whether the contract meets all the requirements. Now, some of these things some of the requirements cannot be on a physical contract. So they wouldn't, if they didn't pay attention, they wouldn't notice that one of the first requirements, there must be the meeting of the minds. That cannot be on the contract. For a contract to be valid, you need to have actually agreed what you wanted and what the other person wanted as well. Now, the other aspect that we also use is in research. So we have a compulsory research paper in the law faculty, and this is where students plagiarize. And they actually use the work of ChatGPT or AIs to write their essays. This is effectively a journal article that they have to write. Now, the AI is not going to give you, now we use footnotes. That AI is not going to put the footnotes in the article. And if you've used ChatGPT, used Gemini, there's a certain format that's generic. So it's very easy to pick up when ChatGPT has been used or an AI has been used to draft something, because it gives you everything in bold, the headings all in bold, the headings are all numbered, and then they give you bullet points. And when students copy and paste that exactly into a thing, that is where the problem lies, without referencing as well. So we try and encourage them, you can use a AI. Use it to give you some guidance as to what you're going to investigate or what you're going to explore, and not, because this can be a stimulus even for postgrad students as well. And this is your starting point. It's not your end point or the use of it. So we've also moved. So for us, it's very important academic integrity and the ethical use of AI. So we've incorporated it in, so we follow the UWC plagiarism policy. That is the one thing that we follow, but we also have faculty-specific guidelines regarding plagiarism. Now, initially our guidelines were drafted with the intention of aligning with the university's plagiarism policy. But with the advent of AI, we had to adapt our guidelines. And we now incorporated a section on the use of AI in our plagiarism guidelines. The reason is because in the law faculty, and most of the lawyers know that every word has a specific meaning, or there's a meaning or different meanings to the word. So the policy currently has the word, the plagiarism policy, when a student takes the work of someone else and portrays it to be their own work. And then the question becomes, is AI someone? And we had to now go and redraft our guidelines to incorporate that little thing, because now we can easily say, no, but AI isn't someone. How do we interpret someone? So unfortunately, most of you are not in the predicament I am, where the interpretation of these words are important in a legal perspective. Okay, so just to give you a sense, I hope it's not really that clear, but this is our section that we actually included with it to address AI and the use of Turnitin and CopyLeaks. So I'm not going to, fortunately, I didn't have any images of CopyLeaks or Turnitin, so you've seen all of that. The other problem we have in the law faculty with Turnitin, not problem with them, but the percentage, acceptable percentage of similarity with Turnitin and CopyLeaks is that we cannot have a specific or a set percentage on, we normally work on the percentage of 25% as acceptable, but we must also accept that there's a possibility that it can be much higher than that because of the nature of our discipline. Students cannot cite legislation or paraphrase legislation. So they have to cite it exactly as it is, because you're changing a word in text changes the meaning of the text as well. So therefore they have to use exactly, and that pushes up the similarity index of the text. So therefore we expect our supervisors to be very much clued up as to identifying what is plagiarized text in a student's work and how to identify it as well. So in conclusion, I'm not taking up too much time. I see Samuel's already looking at me. Okay. Sorry. One of the other initiatives that we also done was that we also invite CIECT to come and train the students. They do have the, I don't want to say generic, but the general workshops for Turnitin and copy leaks. But for our students, we also have them come in and actually train the students on how to use Turnitin. And we have, besides using the LMS platform, Canva, for students to submit assignments and so forth, we also created a class for them on Turnitin themselves so that they can actually submit their drafts there, get the feedback, and go back and rework the thing. Before I conclude, the other point I also want to make with the plagiarism policy and our approach in the faculty, that it's always developmental, is that we encourage our students to embrace the new technology, but also it's not a matter of students being punished at the first instance. Unless there's a thing that this is a serious case. We had a case a few years back where a student took an article of a published article and they removed, they added their name to it, and they forgot to remove the author of the article's footnote, you know, citing who the author was. Normally, your credentials are placed at the bottom of the article, and they forgot to remove that part. And they made it appear as if it was their own work. That is just one of the things regarding plagiarism. But in terms of the AI, we say, use AI, go back, read it, make sure what is written in there is what it actually means. I've used a case recently that I took and I said, provide me a summary of a particular case. Let's say State versus Zuma. And the AI would generate a summary of the case. And it would give me all the facts of the case, but it would relate to a completely different case. And students aren't acutely aware of this, that the AI goes and takes information from places and rephrases it. So what they tend to do is they assume what has been given is correct. So, for example, in this case, wherever Zuma was mentioned in previous cases, they'll take information from those cases to summarize it. And for us to embrace AI, it's not a matter of saying, no, don't use AI, but rather to show students how to use AI more ethically or correctly. And as soon as we say, no, you can't use it, that is when students are actually going to start using it or trying to incorporate it. So the approach would be that we rather use it or embrace it in our approaches, in our teaching as well. So conclusion, it's a valuable tool for learning and teaching in law, because it can also be a case where cases aren't finalized yet. We can ask an AI to predict what is the outcome going to be of a particular case. If we give AI the facts of the case, what are the issues in the case, and they can predict, and we can then see what are the reasons that AI would come up with. And then when the actual judgment is delivered, we can see what are the differences between that. And that's why we say this is a tool that can be used in law. But finally, it's important that it must be used ethically and responsibly in the teaching and learning space. Thank you very much, colleagues.
Good morning, beloved. I asked AI, how should I start my presentation? And AI, AI answered, you ask everyone to just stand up for 1 minute and stretch their legs, and then you present for 14 minutes. So please, everyone, just kick those. Thank you, and I'll speak to you about that app again. Good morning, colleagues. My name is Dr. Tony Williams, Tony with a Y. Got that one? I see you looking up, thinking, yes. If you read it from the back, it is, why not? And when Prof. Governor asked me, Tony, will you present? I said, oh, what did I say? Why not? And here I am, ladies and gentlemen, AI in the classroom. 1991, Bjorn Borg came back, the great comeback after 8 years. And he played in Barcelona Open. And his first round, he played against the guy. What was that guy's name? You see, you don't even know because nobody knows. It was Jordi Arce. And he came back. He was on top form. He was as fit as he left. And he lost 2-0. He did not win one set. Why? Because he was still playing with his wooden racket, where Jordi played with a graphite. So yes, if you stuck with your wooden methods and your wooden stuff, you can be the best, but you will not succeed against. You cannot compete well. He just had to change the racket. He was good. So I've asked the Department of Education who's using it, and there's more people that answered. I just took after 22. I felt that's enough. And then I said, there's a lot that use it very much. If you look at that, 11, 13, 16 people are using it and 6 are not. And that's good news to me because we're going to wake up that 6 people in the future. So I asked, what software are they using? Hello, ChatGPT, because they don't know much about the others. I'll just show you a few of them. Crayon is nice. Okay, so everybody knows crayon. ChatGPT just gives words. You ask for a picture and he will tell you about the picture. Yeah, petal. And they started in, I don't know, we must talk about this thing, eh? I asked, how did they use it? They use it for drawings. And look at this, they use it for drawing. So I went to crayon. And I said to crayon, okay, crayon, draw me Donald Trump on a surfboard. Now, AI is still a baby. He does not know a surfboard and a roller skate. And, so yeah, he drew me one day on a, what is that called? A skateboard. You see, we know more than AI. And then I just thought, let me test him more. I said, right. Little Red Riding Hood, if she had a horse, she would have been there by grandma before the wolf. It's my story. I can make it. And then crayon just drew me that night. I thought, okay, she's going to get there and wonder, was wolf here already or not? So let me get it better. Let me say, put Little Red Riding Hood on the wolf. And just to be funny, I said, and give the wolf 5 legs. Ta-ra-ra-ra. Yeah, you can count the legs. You can count the legs. You can't count till 5. It's 5 legs there. So yes, it's your story. How do you use it in education? It's up to you. You can use it in any art. Small one is you make up your own story. Also, I've looked at it and there was one that's called Meta Demo Lab. And first I drew a stick manatee and then I saw how nice the stick manatee can dance, because this is an animation thing that we use in education. And I thought, but if the stick manatee can dance, what about me? Because I was like from the 80s, and you see there's Jackie Chan, there's Bruce Lee, and there I'm going. Yeah, né? And so a classroom can have a bit of laughter and a bit of fun. If there's no joy in the classroom, we're doing it wrong. And then some of my colleagues said for language editing and translation. And then I've looked at everything that they said, and here I found a nice one, Tutor Lily. Now we're planning to go to Singapore, and there you need to speak Chinese. And I say, hello. And then Lily says, "Si hao." You need to get it right, right? "Si hao." And then, so I practice on this. And when somebody speaks Chinese, she will tell me, "Now my day is good," or something like that, you know? Little AI tools. Literature, develop research, instruments, design lessons and assessments. Mathematics, here we come. Look at photo math. Photo math I have on my phone. I just scan anything that you scan in and you will see it starts giving you the answer, but then it also explains it to you. Now, the first thing that we think is, these learners are not going to do homework anymore because they got this. And so we must teach them a way of thinking, self-directed learning, doing it first, and then using this AI just to confirm their work, see if they get to the right answer. And that is a long way for us to go in South Africa, the culture of real learning and making learning the learner's own. But yes. So let's go back there. It says there, Turnitin. I want to challenge. I want to work with people on Turnitin. You will never be able to find out that I've used Turnitin. You know, I'll tell you, I can write there in the chat GPT. I say, write me a essay on robotics so that Turnitin cannot discover. Because it will do whatever you ask. Me and my colleague there, Dr. Bakari, we tried yesterday. He asked, what is a square in academic terms? And he said, it's a quadrilateral, it's a polynomial. And I asked, what is a square? What's the difference between a square and a rectangle in layman's terms? And then chat tells me, imagine you have a box. And the box, the one side is the top side and the bottom side. And it was really as layman as can be. And then the other one, imagine you have another box, you know, Turnitin will never imagine that I use. So you can actually give the tone for ChatGPT. For plagiarism, that's what we've used Turnitin. So let me just show you Turnitin. What do I have here? Oh, you can have a chat with anybody in the past. I asked Confucius, how will I start? And Confucius said, let them stand up. I say, why? Confucius said, mind can only absorb what bottom can endure. And if you're sitting too long, you lost it. You need to, you know. Because I'm a Christian, I also just tested. I asked Jesus, what must I do? What's my day going to be like tomorrow? And he said, do not worry about the day of tomorrow. The Lord's look after the lilies in the field, the birds in the air, and all that. So I'm not worried about today. It's all the compilation of what these people were. So their answers will. And last, I said Turnitin. So let me show you Turnitin. So Turnitin, you can put a few filters. And then it will check these words and it will see, cite if there's anything there, blah, blah, blah. and then it will tell you 36% of this work is actually from scribed.com or whatever. So yeah, that's Turnitin. Let me carry on. I said the following, and let me show you. I said, write a literature survey in AI using APA 6 referencing at the end. I don't see it, but I will. ChatGPT. And look at this. It actually gave me, there you can see there's my question. My question is there. And citing everything that he tells me, look there, there's Benzio, there's Crayford. And at the end of the day, it gives you references. Now, is that plagiarism? I'm giving credit. I'm just asking. Let me ask you another question. If I ask a question and you, Honzi, ask the same question, will we get the same answer in ChatGPT? Who said what? Somebody said something there. I heard it. Said no way. Said no. Thank you for your courage, because you could have been so wrong, but you're not. You're actually right. Because AI, it's lost. The web knows us. If you go to, I went to a place where we did some archery, and I posted the photos of archery there on Facebook. And for the next 2-3 weeks, if I go to YouTube, I get specials on bows and arrows. Did you not find that? Because the AI knows you already. He knows you, and he will give you an answer that will make you click 9 times in a minute. No? That's the aim. Yeah? So you ask that same question as me, and he will just look at what's your previous engagements and give you a different answer. I heard a show. It is a really show. So what training did they ask for the lecturers? And I'm not going to, it's a lot. I would love to say this is for me important. How can we ethically use AI? Because AI is here to stay. And if you don't believe me, go back, get 2 stones and make a fire. We must think of how to teach him how to use that lighter properly, not here by the hair or whatever. No? We teach him how to use AI responsibly. The university needs to create a platform. Mr. Law, Dr. Law there at the back, you must help us to have these things above board and all of that. And then I want to say I rest my case, but let me just see if there's more. Any questions from your side? Easy questions, we can do that later. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. So Dr. Potberg, along with Prof. Chips, this is the part where we question and answers. Yeah. So I don't know if I come in front, or would you like to sit there? Yeah. Okay. And okay. Could you kindly come to the front, colleagues, so that they can all see you online?
I'll do this.
Colleagues, any questions in the room? Any questions in the room?
Thank you. Thank you for taking the lead, and that we can learn from you. My question is actually, I'm looking at models, how to incorporate the technology into the curriculum. You've provided excellent examples of how you have integrated AI. The one model is the TPAC model, is how you connect the technology with the pedagogy, and also how to connect the technology with the knowledge, the content. And then the second model is this is sort of a classification models like Bloom, where you look at the different levels of implementation. Is the summer model. So the first level is the substitute, and I think this is where the concern is, where we use the technology as a substitute, and there's not really a learning process. But then the good news is on higher levels like Bloom, to augment, to modify, and actually to transform. Did you consider these models when you have used AI, and how to use AI in the learning process? It's just from my side the question. I hope not. No, it's not too difficult for Conrad.
It's extremely difficult. Thank you for that question, Samuel. I'll hand over to him to answer now. But from our side, we're not incorporating AI in the curriculum as part of the syllabus, so to speak, but rather as a resource to aid the learning and teaching process itself. I think once we want to incorporate or integrate AI in the curriculum, I think there's another process that needs to go through Vanessa's office again, that we need to look at what does our course descriptors say, that are we incorporating AI as part of the curriculum in our programs itself as well. So at the moment, we're just using it as a resource and not as part of the actual content that needs to be taught. Thanks.
Thank you very much. The TPAC model, there's a sweet spot if you look at the 3 triangles. That sweet spot is where we must work towards. So you've got your technology, you've got your pedagogy, and you've got your content knowledge. And that pedagogy for everyone will be different. I will use it as confirmation, or I can use it as an introduction on just try this out, and they run with it. So for everyone, it will be different, but we must just try and get that balance between those 3. The summer model, very good model. I've done research on that. When tablets came out, it was just a substitute for a textbook. In 1-2 years later, that tablet became transformational, because now learners start chatting and having conferences, and you ask a question and they know the answer better than you, because it is. And this is the same. We are now crawling, but with technology, we find that in a year or 2, we're not just running or jumping, we are flying. So yes, we can embrace the future with AI. But thank you for your question.
Thank you. We are currently mapping the content in our curriculum, but broader than AI, because in fact for health, our issue is that our workforce, as well as our staff and our students, are not digitally literate. And so we are mapping at the moment to see where in our curriculum we are actually preparing our students for what they will encounter in the workforce out there at the moment. And we will make recommendations. So we're looking at the learning outcomes, etc., to see. And then one of my PhD students is actually mapping the content of the curriculum against the expectations. And we're working with the Department of Health as well, because it's broader than just our students. But I completely agree with you. I won't comment on the frameworks because you commented on it, but about Bloom's taxonomy. And I think it's a very good example of how we need to apply it. Because when you look at the higher levels, when you're looking at evaluating the content that you're getting, when you're looking at, assessing the appropriateness of what and adapting that and synthesizing it into something else and referring to it as a source, then you get kind of critical thinking level use of it, rather than just extracting. And we have to teach students to stop just copying. Sometimes they copy and paste and it looks exactly like it looks 100%, even the black box from the original one. Thank you.
Any more questions, colleagues? plagiarism, academic integrity, ChatGPT, turn it in. Yeah, cool.
Zainoisa Ali. Thanks, Dr. Tony. I guess the animated drawing can be more useful in health sciences like physiotherapy. And what about physics to create a simulation showing a concept, example, the effect of forces?
Thank you, Zaina, for that question. I said easy questions, not difficult ones. Yes. It might be more difficult than it looked like. That one that I've done there was just showing them where all the hinges are of a body, and the computer generated that. But yes, certainly when it comes to free fall projections in physics, that will be easier to project with AI. And as I say, we're in our baby shoes. We don't know how this baby will grow up. Thank you, Zainab.
Okay. The next question is from Arthur. It is foreseeable that AI will be able to accurately detect whether AI was involved in drafting an assignment, dissertation, or thesis in the future. Advanced plagiarism detection tools, linguistic analysis techniques, and AI itself will be able to find and analyze writing patterns, coherence, originality, and other factors. So what are we, or can we do the future-proof degrees so that higher education does not have a crisis in future when numerous past transgressors are discovered?
I mean, I think for us the issue is, and I think all three of us said it, I think, and that's what I think why we're here today is to talk about how do we ensure academic integrity. And I think it is the challenge for us in developing our guidelines.
I think we've dealt with that quite extensively, like Prof said now, is that one of the things is that although technology or AI is developing, one of the things is that we need to embrace it, but we also as humans, so to speak, need to be able to distinguish between what is AI generated and what is human drafted. In most instances, we can easily pick up at our undergrad level when this is not our students' writing, especially in terms of the grammar and the neatness of the writing. As an undergrad student, they don't write neatly. They don't, when I say neat, I'm not speaking about the actual handwriting, but the coherence of their writing and even the punctuation. Our students are not at that level or at undergrad level of placing a comma in front of and. And that is a common giveaway with AI writing, is a number of thoughts with a comma just before the and. So these are the things that we still need to look at, but it is something that we need to adapt to as well. Thank you.
Then Dr. Shirley Neerpoot, thank you colleagues for the interesting presentations. How do we invoke digital and information literacy skills and competencies at the first year level?
Can I just hear that question one more time?
Yeah. How do we invoke digital and information literacy skills and competencies at the first year level?
I heard that. That's going to be a bumpy road. And I can tell you, you're not going to be able, even with Turnitin and whatever software, really determine whether this was from the internet or not, whether it was their ideas or not, because that's how you ask the question. I think we should teach them how to use it responsibly. And if you say, like I said there, with the referencing, then lead them and guide them to go and actually go to Google Scholar and get these books. And even if they just read the abstract and the conclusion to get an idea of it, and then they write it in their own. But this thing is here to stay. We need to teach them how to use it properly, and we can just trust that they do. Because we're not living in a world with Easter Bunny and Father Christmas. they're gonna try and they're gonna get it right. So sorry.
Okay. And then here's a question from Anonymous. What are AI options for subject-specific multilingual teaching and learning? Many of our students are not English first language speakers. One of the problems with this has been having teachers who are competent in several languages enough to translate material. But even with multilingual staff, the time and resource constraints are very real. So I'm wondering whether there are any spaces where people are experimenting with AI for providing multilingual teaching material and interactions in the classroom. Is there any value in your disciplines for multilingual teaching and learning practices?
Thank you. I would just quickly answer that one. I went through the different fields in education, whether it was biology, whether it was physics, all these things that we have there. And there were so many apps for so many things. It's a whirlpool out there and we do not know what is there. For translation, I got such a lot of things they speak, they type. So yes, there are apps. We must just go and look and identify. Just ask AI for what apps. AI will even give that to you. God sake. But you're all covered. Don't worry. For all the fields, there's apps.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We're now heading into the second part of the presentation. So just yes. Okay. So I'd like to call up Dr. Amareka from the Faculty of Arts and Science. So the next few presentations, three are from the Faculty of Arts and Humanities and the Faculty of Natural Sciences. And that will lead us off just Q&As, and then after that will be a tea break. Yeah. But we are on track, colleagues. I'm going to do one. Okay. No problem. Yeah.
Good morning, colleagues. Can everybody hear me? I was excited for a split second because I heard that I was from the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, which felt like a considerable promotion, especially when we're speaking about technologies this morning. One of the pleasures of listening to my colleagues in the preceding presentations has in fact been that in my own thinking about artificial intelligence and how we at institutions of higher education could possibly respond to these very rapid developments in terms of the public release and the wider availability of sort of platforms driven by AI, is that I have been almost sort of drilling narrowly into thinking about to a certain degree, drilling narrowly to really asking what are the implications for the arts? What are the implications for myself and my colleagues in the fields of humanities? So it's really interesting to sort of have the wider discussion from all the various faculties. Can you go to the first slide? So I'm going to, because we have such a brief, just have 15 minutes each, I'm going to do a little bit of reading as a way of trying to discipline myself and keeping to the time. And what I'd first like to do is to just give you a quick heads up as to the different documents that we have developed for our faculty and how this coheres with other sort of resources, specifically online resources. So I took Vanessa's brief very literally, that we should speak to any guidelines or frameworks that we may have developed for our faculties. And because around about a month ago, a little bit more than a month ago, we released what we called an updated advisory document about generative AI and learning and teaching in the humanities. I'm going to, in part of my presentation, literally sort of try and take you through the way in which we put together our document. But I want to also explain that the way, and I'm the author of the document, the way I set up the document is that it sort of is complemented by a website that, let's see if we can go. Can you click on the website and see if it comes up? Let's see what happens there. But it's complemented by a website which is dedicated to exploring specifically the possibilities and the conundrums that may be presented to people who teach in the humanities by generative AI chatbots. So we started this morning with a presentation from public health and community health. Sorry, I'm maybe mixing up my faculties now. A presentation from nursing, where there was this very nice noting of the sort of what the range of technology involved in AI. So we're focusing for now quite specifically on, or most strongly on, generative AI, given that it's very much sort of pushed its way into the terrain of reading and writing that's very important for the humanities. No, I can't look there. I can't see myself and function. So let's keep my back firmly to the screen. Can we go back to the slides and just stay with that? There's a chatbot. There's a simulacrum of me. So yeah. So our advisory aims to strike a balance between providing essential and basic information about generative AI, while also homing on key questions for how we could continue to encourage students to learn crucial skills of critical thinking. So here I want to be on the next slide, which it's slide 3, I think. Sorry, yeah, that one. Very nice. So this is my effort yesterday to sort of free think about some of the abilities and the way in which it's, in a sense, what I'm articulating there is our commitment to various of our graduate attributes, not really wanting to exclude the whole array of graduate attributes, but homing in on some of what we want our students to learn: the ability to read with attention and comprehension, experiencing the act of reading as a journey of discovery, beginning to introduce, even from the first year, our students into what do we mean by, what does the act of analysis involve, learning how to ask questions of the text that one reads. And I'm not going to actually read through all of those, but you can see there's engaging with debates, there's building arguments, there's also developing your own voice. And I'm sure that people here have also been thinking about what conundrums and challenges might the easy availability of, generating text as a prompt present to us wanting to engage students with building their confident singular voice. Critical self-reflection through writing and discussion. Let's just see where we are now. Yeah, you can slide on. So I wanted to, we're not going to try and go to any of these documents, because I don't think the internet is working very well. But so the website that I developed, an important sort of sections of the website introduces, it provides, it sort of curating the various toolboxes that South African universities have developed on the one hand, and it's also, so it shows and it discusses and introduces toolboxes provided by various of our sister universities. And then it also, oh goodness, there we are. And then it also talks about the way in which you can actually go back to the slide. It also suggests that there has been a change of tone or a deepening of engagement, which I suppose is to be expected over the past year and a half. So that I think that the first toolboxes, which were kind of produced at quite astonishing speed by some of our universities, came out just a month or two after ChatGPT was launched in its public version. I think of those as very much, the tone is about excitement, embracing the new technologies. And what I find very interesting is that, so embrace the new, this is how we do it. You know, a guide to using prompts and so on. So the second generation of advisories that have come out over the last few months, and I think Stellenbosch University is a very good example of that. And it's also interesting to compare Witz's first document and the documents and sort of discussion pieces he's produced more recently. But Stellenbosch University has a document that it presents as a sort of a live document, but it's very, very nicely packaged, and it sort of grapples up front with the possibilities, but also the sort of sticky points and the conundrums that it presents, the presence of these technologies present to us as people who want to draw students into creative and reflective and critical thinking, how to learn to do research, how to actually write by and for themselves. Right. So here I want to go to, where are we now? Slide 4. So the next slide, you can go one. Yep. So now I'm speaking to, I assume these slides will be shared via email. So you'll be able to, I'm not quite sure if I did it here, but you should be able to click. I'll organize that you can click to our actual document, which I've placed on Google Drive. And what I've done here is just to give you the subheadings of the document, I suppose, as a way of sharing with you how we've tried to make a usable guidelines and what we've particularly flagged as part of those guidelines. So it starts, as I think one should, with, and again, our focus is on generative AI chatbots. One of them, of course, very well-known example is ChatGPT, but you know that there are others, and that there's been a rapid, you know, there's that sort of arms race between all the huge companies to compete with all the problems of, dubious aspects of the technology that comes with rapid release. So what is generative AI? And already we start flagging some of the issues. It tries to combine a basic introduction with flagging some of the ethical issues that may be coming up for us. With regards to, as other speakers also mentioned, issues of authorship, whether the fact that many of these platforms do not really respect where authorship or indicate where arguments or where text has originated. References, and our first presentation talked about the sort of ethical issues that may come about if we participate, if we contribute to the auto-learning of these systems. In other words, as soon as you put text, if I go to this rather attractive, intriguing platform called ChatPDF, I can input I can, decide I don't feel like reading the latest publication by my colleague Zanny Bok, and I don't have time. So I'm just quickly going to upload it to Chat PDF, and I'm going to ask for the main points. Now I've enabled ChatGPT to get better at simulating my colleagues' writing. So ethical implications in terms of our use is important to flag up front. Then we go on to flag the capacity, recent developments in terms of what is available for free. Again, we discuss some ethical implications of the business strategy to offer free and paid for services. I've already referred to that. And then, so I think it's important to understand to have a grasp of what students may be using and what can be attractive and what could also be helpful for students as part of their tasks. We discuss the issue of, the current capabilities of copy leaks and Turnitin, particularly its capacity and the limitations for auto-identification of AI-generated text. And here it's interesting. I had a discussion with colleagues at CIECT recently, and it was interesting to me to learn that, the current versions of some of the AI chatbots, and from the start, you could sort of ask ChatGPT, please write me an essay, the essay a 6-year-old might write about, my vacation. But now you can also ask ChatGPT, and it could do quite well at saying, please write me an essay by, I'd have to think about how the prompt should be worded, right? But it can generate an essay as if written by an Afrikaans speaker, which includes some classic grammar mistakes that Afrikaans speakers might make in an English essay. So that sort of imitative ability is prompted to approve all the time. But I think that what's very important, and I'd like to maybe mention that I've been having conversations as part of writing with Arana Dyson of the Writing Center over the last couple of weeks. And so we were talking about the way in which one can get stuck on the whole issue of the authenticity of assignments. How can we tell that an assignment is authentic? And in a sense, almost the way in which plagiarism is sometimes reduced to worrying about cheating. And that what's really at the center for us as higher education lecturers and learning and teaching specialists, etc., is how do we enable students to learn through doing? How do we draw students into a range of activities? Some of them might indeed involve working with our technologies, but how do we really make the most of the affordancy of different technologies, including the old technologies of the book, the pen and paper, as well as the kind of the latest digital technologies. So there is a discussion about how should we encourage, when and how should we encourage, how can we create moments as part of students' learning journey when they are invited to put their cell phones aside, put their laptops perhaps even aside, and really work with presence, pay attention, and work with the capabilities of their own minds to improve ways to read, write, and think. So here, I'm going to run over time, so I just want to flag one more thing that I think is very important, and that is that there's a recent research paper that came out towards the end of last year by Tanya Bosch, Sisanda Nkwala of our linguistics department was one of the writers, Alit Skoen from Rhodes University and several others. And so they did a survey, had some focus groups and worked with surveys to explore with students from 5 universities. UCT was not included, but locally CPUT was included. I mean, UWC was not included, UCT and CPUT was included, to find out whether and what AI technologies students, or specifically generative AI technology students, are using. And that was really interesting. And one of the sort of patterns that they seem to flag is that in the first place, ChatGPT was not the major thing that students were accessing. Various students were perhaps using Quillbot and Grammarly, and particularly students who are second language English, and who have perhaps insecurities about their own ability to articulate in English, were defending their use of Grammarly for language correction and saying these are important tools for us to learn with. So I think that we would do well to also really, all the different engagements that we need to do with our students, also including finding out what they are doing and what they find useful. Then just one last thing, the whole issue of critical ethics, critical AI literacy and digital literacy, I think, is absolutely core and crucial. And really brokering, creating clear frameworks for not only for our university, but also down to the level of modules of what we expect of students. There are very interesting experiments at other universities in terms of co-creating those kinds of documents. And what is also that page 4 there, I don't know if you can read it, it says examples of module-specific course policies about the possible use of generative AI by students. That is presented as an appendix to the guidelines. And so what I've drawn from a publicly available, it's actually largely American document, and it's populated by lecturers from a wide number of universities and disciplines. They're sharing their own guidelines or the framework that they've developed at the level of their particular course module. And the idea is that we share that with our lecturers in our faculty to think towards the guidelines and the directives that they might be giving their own students. I'll leave it at that.
And then our last presentation before breaking for tea is the Faculty of Natural Sciences. That's Dr. Upton, or is it School of Pharmacy? Yes, within the Faculty of Natural Sciences. So they'll both be presenting, so it's a big issue. So.
Okay, I think it's still morning. Good morning, everyone. So my name's Alex, and this is my colleague, Eddie. So we are from the School of Pharmacy. And today we're going to talk about what we were thinking about as augmented education, especially with regard to AI. And we actually use the word shaping over there, but it's less about how AI is sort of shaping us, but more about how we are using AI to shape our teaching. So just a brief outline of how we're going to do this. So we thought, okay, a nice way to actually think about how we are using AI at the School of Pharmacy, specifically Eddie and myself, is to start at the basic level, which is where I come in, the very, very bottom level of how we use AI. And then we'll move on to the progressive use and the prospective use of AI, which is where Eddie will come in. So Here's just, if you can see, just a little sort of cutout of ChatGPT 3.5. And now you might ask, Alex, why ChatGPT 3.5? Well, quite simple. It's the first one Eddie introduced me to. That's why I'm using it. But I have been making strides. He has been introducing me to a few other ones like Cloud, and also like we saw with some of the other previous presentations, like Crayon looks very, very interesting. So we look at the chat. So there you can see where I started or had previous prompts. So I've used it for a few different things, but I thought maybe let's start right at the bottom. So as a new academic coming in last year, I had a question. When is the best time to release grades to students? So I thought, okay, if I finish marking at a not normal time of the day, so can I just put it on gradebook straight away, release it to the students, done and dusted? No, right? No. So I thought, okay, let me just do a simple prompt and ask ChatGPT. So I asked ChatGPT, when is the best time to release grades to students? Okay. And if we look at the sort of answer it gave me, so I thought, okay, cool. It's going to tell me, okay, Alex, 8 a.m. Monday, you release the grades. No. Gave me tips. So promptness, that's something that I thought about. The minute you're done marking, release it. But all these other things like consistency was really cool for me. So for example, some of our subjects will have 2 tests, 3 tests. Okay, so the students know turnaround time for marking of the test and releasing of their grades every week. Okay, it gives them a comfortable environment. They can feel safe. They know a week after the test, I will get my grade. Not something a new academic like me actually thought about. And then avoiding holidays and weekends, and then the other one before major deadlines. So I don't have to tell you if you're going to release test grades before a major deadline, like if you have postgrad students with research proposals and things, yeah, you don't want to release it then. Definitely not. And then something else that I used it for is a colleague was asked for a bit of help with drafting a rubric for our Masters of Clinical Pharmacy students. And basically, this rubric was for a reflective essay that our students have to write. And the essay is about how do they sort of feel about the concepts of clinical pharmacy and pharmaceutical care, and basically taking that and running with it. Okay. So basically, she shared a rubric with me and said, please, will you assist me? So I thought, okay, let me ask ChatGPT for a bit of help. And this is what it kicked out after a few more prompts. But basically, you can see the title there, rubric for assessing reflective essays. And I sort of try to condense it a bit with a few extra prompts. You can see it's sort of few words, not really as in-depth as what it originally was. But just a few things to note about where I sort of could add more value to our own rubric, or where this rubric augmented the rubric that we were developing. So things like organization and structure. Okay, so simple, right? We had it there, but they talk about the progression, a coherent progression. And coming from the hard sciences, reflections, and sort of progression with reflections, not an easy concept for me to understand, but this helped me understand that more. And then the one there applies theoretical knowledge to practice. So that is extremely important when it comes to reflections. When you read about the concept of clinical pharmacy or pharmaceutical care, how are you applying it, or how do you look to apply it? And that's a key part of reflections. And that leads to the next one, which is where we were talking about the depth of the reflection. So although in our sort of first draft of the rubric, we looked at the depth of we looked at sort of reflections, there wasn't enough emphasis on this. And that's where ChatGPT augmented our rubric by helping us to understand, okay, wait, we should actually put a little bit more weighting on the depth of the student's actual reflection. And then very, very basic ones. This is actually a memo that I developed for one of our for one of our modules. And essentially what I did is I sort of typed out all the answers there. But then if you look at the bold the bold and italicized words. Those are keywords or key phrases that I actually took from ChatGPT and added to this memo. So it then actually helped when we were busy grading. And this year, when we're going to be actually having external people help us grade, this is just going to make it so much easier for them, so much clearer for them. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Eddie now to take you through the next levels.
Thank you, Alex. So I thought about this this morning a little bit because I realized there's quite a few people who know a lot about AI. So maybe I start with this. Does anyone know when humans no longer were the champions of chess? When did we stop being the champions of chess? When did machines surpass us? Hey? When did machines surpass us with playing chess? So like chess, black and white pieces we move on the board. 1997. 1997, that was the last time humans were the best in the world at chess. So to add some more context to this, around about 2016, Google's first AI was trained on chess for 4 hours. And in that 4 hours, it won all of the previous machines. So would you be able to create a grand champion in chess in 4 hours? A human grand champion in chess, would you be able to? There's just no ways. Not in 4 hours, not a human grand champion. With prayer. Maybe with prayer. Maybe there's a chance there. There's maybe a chance. But generally speaking, to become an expert in anything won't take you 4 hours. It'll take you much, much, much longer. So the machines are learning, not machines, I'm saying in such a negative way, but the machines are learning quite fast. That's why I decided to focus on how we can augment our own ability. So using the machines to improve whatever we are already doing. Okay. This is a quick little example of just making class funner. I mean, a lot of times when I sat in class as a student, I couldn't stay awake. So the more fun we can make class, the better. So I'm not autistic, but now I can be autistic. So this is a nice example. This is just a difference between two antibiotics, one very resistant to antibiotics and to bacteria. One very resistant against antibiotics and the other one not resistant against antibiotics. So it just makes class a little bit funner. Then I'm also not a counselor, but as a lecturer, you kind of end up in a situation where you need to counsel students a lot. You end up in a situation a lot. So I got an email that was extremely lengthy, but I couldn't really see the themes in here. But through ChatGPT, I could identify the themes and the emotions the student is experiencing. Even if I could have done it myself, this helped me brainstorm in a different way that I wouldn't have been able to brainstorm before. So then I could take a step back and think about how best to respond to the student. Then I'm not an expert in Excel, but I really don't like I don't like typing my grades into the gradebook because it's very tedious. So everyone has probably seen that you can import your grades into the gradebook, but to do that, you need to have a very specific format in your CSV file. And I can't create that very specific format because I'm not an expert in Excel, but ChatGPT that can understand Excel's instructions very well can help me do that. So I could import all of my grades instead of actually typing them in one by one. So it's once again augmenting my own abilities. Then I think in terms of Bloom's, everyone has touched on Bloom's in some way, but helping you better apply the Bloom's taxonomy to your work is simplified through the use of AI. You have a much better chance of applying it more effectively by using AI effectively. And I will get to a portion that explains this a bit better in a second. Oh, this was just for fun. Let's skip this one, not so important. So those are simple uses still. I'm going to the progressive uses. I'm going to the progressive uses, and I think the progressive uses are incredibly important because this is an arms race and it's not stopping. In 4 hours, the machine of the AI model that Google made could beat any human or any previous model. So even while we're sitting here, there are models being created right now that are beating the models that we are currently using. And if we are extremely honest with ourselves, very few people can write better than that current model. I can't write better than the current 3.5, even never mind 4, and I can't spell better, and I can't place my commas better. It's already surpassed me in many ways. And if you see that previous image of the different antibiotics and what they look like, I would never have been able to draw that. So the AI models are growing exponentially. So that's why I'm so focused on augmenting our own abilities by using them. So this is a little bit complicated to explain, but I'll get into it a little bit. But of course, the students are also using it. I don't know if you remember in COVID, but in COVID, what did your short answers look like? They didn't look like this. I hope you can all see, but our short answers did not look like that. They were short, they were shorter, but now it's point by point by point. I don't remember the students ever giving me these answers, and about 60% of the class had answers similar to this. So the students are using it. There's no denying it. Would you be able to mark all of it effectively always? And would you be marking the student or would you be marking the AI? This is the real problem that we are facing. I have an idea about it. So because it's all augmenting our own abilities, I went into programming a lot this year, but for the sake of making my own work easier. And it became more difficult at the same time by doing that. So what I did here is I created a piece of code that I can scrape off all of the answers the students are submitting on eCanva. So I get all of the answers they submit to a case that I created. And the case I created, I have my own Bloom's taxonomy breakdown of that case and my own memorandum for that case. So I've got the context for that case. And I program this context into my program. So first I scrape all the documents from the students. Then I get it into a CSV file and I export all of that with the instructions and the context to an LLM like ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT is actually marking it. But it's marking it with my context and my instructions. That is the important part, because now the students can use GPT as they want, but if they use it without the context, they're still wrong. Even if it looks brilliant, it's still wrong. So once again, this is also, I wasn't an expert in any of this, but ChatGPT augmented me once again. So I couldn't get all of the reports I generated to the students, but I figured out, since we have Google Suite has an ability or a function that you can actually get all of the emails sent to students, and then you link them to their specific folders. And since I automated all of this, I could get a report for every single student that looked something like this. There's 10 questions and they're getting feedback on their answers according to the context that I gave. So now I'm actually getting it marked through an LLM following my precise instructions. And this was about 900 pages of content. I don't know about you guys, but I would not be able to write 900 pages of feedback to students. So in essence, what I'm saying, why I'm excited about the future and the progressive use, if you can get the LLM to mark it in the context that you want it, then the students can use the LLM and learn with it as much as they want until they get the context correct. And as soon as the context is correct, then you have actually taught them. So all is well. That's the end goal. We want them to understand the context that we're talking about. So this is just another example of it. And I think that you can actually see, I also asked it to actually mark, and then I gave it instructions on where you should allocate marks. And it can do this very well. And remember once again, even if this isn't perfect, the next model coming July will be closer. And the next model coming December will be closer. So eventually you'll end up in a situation where employing a system like this will be absolutely necessary. Okay, one more thing. This is the email that all of the students got. So they got their own reports for their own folders, and it was based on this LLM model that I used with my instructions to mark their work. And then they got feedback, and they can go read their feedback, and they can redo it as many times as they want. And it's simply replacing the marking for me. I don't need to do the marking itself. I don't need to do the report writing. And since I created the first iteration with all the context and the Bloom's taxonomy I needed, it's just following those steps over and over and over again. And I think this is going to be important into the future because students will use GPT and you will end up with answers that are 5 pages for 2 marks. We're gonna be bombarded with GPT-like things in the future. So the best way in my mind to counteract any of that is to use GPT better than they're using it. And in a sense, I want to say I've been quite disappointed with the students using GPT so far because they haven't been able to use it effectively. And in a sense, that it makes sense. They shouldn't be able to use it effectively because they don't have the content knowledge yet. That's why they can't actually use it effectively, but they will try. So we still need to guide them through the trying. And I think I've covered something of everything. Thank you, guys.
Okay, and then we'll do one last position and then questions after that. Thank you. Yes. Colleagues, we're doing one last presentation from the Faculty of Natural Sciences also, but this one from Computer Sciences.
Thank you. Okay, so I think I'm standing in front of you last because I presume computer science are the culprits for all the mess that we're in, right? So anyway, my presentation is very different. But okay, let's jump in. I don't have a lot of time. It's specifically about the digital first world, shaping our response. But I wanted to start with this slide saying that as computer scientists, we are really in trouble because the exponential development with regards to code generation is massive. In 2022 already, DeepMind released this AlphaCode platform that generated code better in competitions than 45% of the competitors. That was in 2022. This was released in March, where Devin is actually an AI engineer. It does end-to-end deployment of applications, and it basically does all the critical thinking that is in essence necessary for code generation, for complete applications, right? And that is what we do as computer scientists. Okay, I actually got a tweet this morning about Devin. The company is 6 months old, 2 billion value this morning. Okay, so this is what NVIDIA CEO said. We are democratizing coding. Okay, and you will know they are the latest entrants into the AI war. Okay, so anybody that can write natural language will be able to code soon. And thank you for my previous colleagues, because this exponential growth of AI is insane at the moment. Okay, so we as humans are not really, we don't understand exponential growth, but this is what we're seeing in the AI world. Anyway, that was just my quick introduction, and now to the digital first world. Now, the discussion is based on recent research in the social technical world. Now, the computing sciences actually, and I think I don't know whether economic and management sciences will be here, but information systems are usually part of their world, and computer science in the natural sciences, and social technical research sits in the middle. Now, the idea of social technical research is to understand how technology are influencing society in a sense. Okay, so this is just quickly my outline, and I'll go very fast. I can keep you busy for quite a long time. But the digital first world, the best thing to explain that is to start with an example. Okay, so that was me when I was still nice and young, okay? And you remember the days when your ID book was everything, right? It slowly got replaced by cards, okay? But your passport was the big thing. If you wanted to travel, you couldn't do it without the physical document, right? This document had to be in your possession all the time. Okay, so now what happened recently is if you apply for any visa, you basically have to give your biometrics, right? Fingerprints, facial recognition, that's part of the process. Okay, and slowly this has been replacing our physical documents. So this is just a discussion. This is part of a keynote that I gave last year. But I mean, this was my experience. I was in the US end of March. And when usually at passport control, right, they already verify you, but you still have to give your document. When I got to the boarding gate, they only took a picture of my face. They didn't even screen my boarding pass to get onto the flight in South Africa. Okay, so what has happened? Okay, the digital world has completely taken over. Okay, so what this is about is that we before had a physical world and a digital world, whatever, but the digital world was a reflection of the physical world. It has changed. And this little image was generated by Midjourney last year. Okay, so this is the core paper on which this work is positioned or whatever. But what I basically say is there is an ontological reversal of the digital and the physical worlds. Okay, where our physical reality preceded the digital before, it is now changed. Okay, so the digital world are now preceding and also influencing and prescribing our, physical reality. Okay, so how did this happen? Now, okay, the big thing is, of course, digitization. Okay, we started, I mean, this was a desk in 1980. Everything there was physical. Your computer was basically a typewriter. I mean, you had your everything there, right? Your fax machine, your calendar, your pictures. Okay, by 2014, we were already digital, but okay, it was still very premature. Okay, but now we've got a completely digital world because of the exponential growth in technology. Okay, so just to discuss this a little bit more philosophical, we have to look at the digital object. Okay, what this is in the beginning when we started with digitization, we made a copy of a book and there was actually a file that was lying on your hard drive, right? There was a file, it was recognizable, it was there. That is basically the 2014 world. Okay, but very quickly technology developed to the level where we could actually take that thing apart. And that original digital object was taken apart into its components, right? The text, the author, the font, everything that's necessary to create that thing. By then, this book didn't exist really anymore. Okay, a digital copy of that book. The text and everything around it was basically the digital objects, okay? What is nice is you could actually, I want to fast forward to this. What is nice is once you've got that, you can actually render this book in any way that you want now. That is why we see a Kindle book. You can read it on your phone. You can actually make a copy of it. You can take pieces of it. You can have samples of it. You can do anything with it, right? It has gone through this whole cycle, but that thing, that original copy actually doesn't exist anymore in this digital world. Now, even worse, we before had the text most probably contained in some format. Large language models took the words now. And while our large language models are trained, is models that actually detect the proximity of words with regards to each other. Okay, and that is why it's generative. Right. So what does this now say? This digital world is non-physical. Nothing in this digital world reflects something in reality. The reality is only happen, or basically only happen when it goes back and it's computed and rendered to our physical world in a way that we recognize. But at the back, there's no physical thing that resembles your original object. Okay, now that has got a lot of implications because, and I mean, you all of you know that, those digital, I mean, the moment we had books digital, you could copy them, you can send them to friends, you can transgress all the copyright, you can cut it, you can divide it, you can get pieces of it, you could actually take a photograph, send it to a friend of a page that you like. You can extend it, you can manipulate it, you can do anything with that digital object. Okay, it doesn't, there's nothing, because it doesn't exist in space and time. Okay, you can actually do whatever you want with it, okay? But it's even worse, it's very extremely mutable, which means it can morph into something else. And nowadays, this is the biggest reason why we see such a prolific explosion in digital objects, which is changing our world, right? Cell phones integrate everything that you do on them. And it creates profiles that can be used. And that is why, even if you do a Google Chrome search or you speak to somebody in your home and Google is listening, you get a feed on your Facebook the next day. Okay, that's what's happening. You can take a tweet, a photograph of a tweet. Even if Donald Trump deletes that tweet, that photograph is actually distributed world over. Okay, so it basically just continues. Right, now, just quickly, since we are on Google, I don't know whether any of you actually went through the effort to read what Google is telling you, okay? When you search for a restaurant on Google Maps or watch a video on YouTube, for example, we process the information about that activity, including information such as the video that you watch, device ID, IP addresses, cookie data, and everything. On top of that, we also combine this data among our services and others, okay, across your devices for these purposes, right? And then on top of that, we combine it with other people's data, okay? So Google uses your and other people's navigation data to improve maps, right? So very interesting world. Now, just quickly, and I know I'm going over time, what it actually means, this world, you've got no control over anything that you create. You've got no ownership. That thing will live forever. It's not time and space bounded. It's not traceable anymore. Okay, once you've taken that tweet and you've basically sent it to somebody on WhatsApp, they send it to somebody else, you know, and it grows and it's everywhere in the world, and it must probably live forever. And again, it's completely mutable. Can be changed, can be cut, can be whatever. Now AI. So my statistical colleagues aren't here, okay, but for a very long time, our AI that we had, the basic AI, was very well behaved. Okay, we could explain the models, we can do wonderful things with them. Our data sets were relatively clean, we could optimize the models. We saw massive advancements in technology just using these basic models. But stuff changed, right? Just because of the way that technology has grown and the way in which digital objects can be pulled apart, we basically have a completely new world. And the stuff is really generated. Words such as copyright doesn't mean a thing, because those generative AI models were trained on words and proximity of words with each other. That's the fundamental model. Okay, nobody owns words. Okay, so, I mean, this was generated by, I think, Midjourney. Okay, now the interesting thing, just take it into account. Whenever before we saw pictures of humans, it was based in some kind of reality. There were people like that somewhere. Okay, they could have been edited, whatever, but they were there. These people don't exist. They never have. This has been generated, completely new. Okay, and as we said, these things grow exponentially. This was last year. This is the prompt. She still had 3 hands. Okay, the bottom model. But Midjourney has become so much better, at least orders of magnitude better at image generation than when we basically started it. Okay, this was October. So whenever you say anything about large language models, remember to put the date because tomorrow it will be different. Okay, anyway, digital first world. Digital objects are not physical, okay? Every physical to digital interaction that we do, your computer, your phone, just walking with your phone, create digital objects, okay? And we're not even aware of it. Artificial intelligence use these things. That's why we see such an explosion in the development of AI and generative AI. What is interesting, this digital first world is already changing our world. The way we interact, the way we do things, it's starting to prescribe what we do, how we do it. And if you don't think about that, you basically get lost, right? But who of you can drive without maps? Okay, we can't anymore, right? So it's just shaping and changing our world in many, many different areas. Okay, now on top of that, it doesn't care about human values. Okay, so we can put a little bit of sauce on top of it, right? Trying, forcing it to be more diverse or inclusive or whatever. But large language models doesn't care about the truth. Okay, it doesn't exist in that world. Okay, it's basically words. It doesn't care about truth, reality, representation, or whatever you want in the physical world to be true. It doesn't exist in the digital world. Okay, so I don't have an answer what to do with this, but one of the things that always baffles me is that people ask ChatGPT, please. Okay, it doesn't matter. You should actually say, stupid, give me something. But I mean, that also gives it a human nature. Hi, Google, play some music, please. Why are you so polite? just in case, and the IOs are taking over, just keep the guy alive, he's been polite, okay? Anyway, what is our response? And we get back to some of these things. Digital literacy are incredibly important. And I don't even know at what level to break into students if we are struggling with digital literacy. Okay, and just awareness, right? Don't buy into a single platform. Don't use only Google or only Apple, okay? Because you're sharing everything that you basically do with those platforms. And especially when it's free, they're using your data, okay? The world is already very much digital first. And I mean, stuff like digital currencies, stuff, we just have to start to think about what's happening here. The moment we lose physical money, for instance, where are we going? Digital first platforms has got an arms race. And the people that control AI are the people that are the powerful people of the future. Okay. And none of the current LLMs are in any way really present in South Africa. You have to pay to access any of these platforms, and it's just going to become worse. Okay, so what are we going to do with regards to the digital divide? Okay, because they don't, they don't care about Africa in a sense, right? Anyway, so when we start to talk about this framework, we have to first ask, what is a framework? Secondly, really understand what AI is, not just the technology, but where this is going. And then, of course, what are the foundational principles of such a framework? Now, I'm starting to think, given the future that we have to train computer science students for, that we should not integrate AI into our current teaching and learning, but we should actually integrate teaching and learning into the digital first world. And I'm absolutely not sure how that world is going to look. But I mean, to train students to code at this stage is for me a big question mark. But I don't know how you get to the upper levels of Bloom without actually teaching in the foundations, right? So, but anyway, that's my story, sorry. And this was generated by DALL-E yesterday. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, colleagues. So we're gonna do a quick Q&A with all of our presenters. So that will be Dr. Dutoit, Alex and Eddie, and Prof. Herber. Yes, please do come to the front.
Where's the rest?
Okay, I'm trying again. I'm saying I was trying to hide behind the pole so that ChatGPT doesn't see who's texting. Just a question, how do you manage the referencing? Because I was once a student not long ago. Then I used different paraphrasing apps to paraphrase one. If I've got my answer from ChatGPT, I paraphrase on a different app, and then I paraphrase on a different app, and I paraphrase again. And then there's my reference. I use the first reference, which is the original person. So how do you cross-check that my referencing is what I actually submitted?
I can try. Managing referencing with ChatGPT, I haven't been able to have any intervention or stop anyone from doing certain things. Like if they use it well, you can't see it. So I can't see if they're using ChatGPT for their referencing. In my mind, logically, they probably are. And even inside ChatGPT, if you use the paid version 4, you can get access to something called SciSpace. And with SciSpace, your referencing is absolutely perfect. So I don't think we'll be able to catch them doing the referencing. I think maybe teaching them how to do it well with GPT makes more sense.
I think this, it's an interesting question. and it relates to our skepticism in the humanities with regards to you know, whether we should, how and where students could use generative AI chatbots such as ChatGPT and its cousins for when they are actually learning about how to do research. I've tried both ChatGPT is entertainingly confabulatory when you ask it to, for example, to do a literature review. A colleague recently sent me a discussion, I think that he had with ChatGPT 4, where he kept saying, he was being very polite, but he kept saying, I'm sorry, but these authors don't exist. Oh, I'm so sorry, ChatGPT says. Here's 3 other authors. And all of it is just completely fabricated. And it's because of why there are very interesting discussions which we actually have on our, summarized on our website, because I think it's very important, where some of the sort of, key players, I'm not going to remember names offhand, who were kicked out of Google at an earlier stage of the development of generative AI capabilities. One of the things they disagreed with, one point of disagreement was the fact that there was this, as I understand it with my limited knowledge of how generative AI worked, there was a deliberate decision to not build a sort of a careful archiving capacity and kind of acknowledgement of resources into how various of these chatbots work. So, so we have a lot of money behind these platforms, and certain kinds of capabilities are being emphasized. And I mean, it also relates to then one thing that I didn't emphasize in terms of what our own efforts to sort of produce guidelines and a framework is that this is also then why it's very important to think about what are we asking our students to do in terms of learning activities. Because certainly at the moment, my sense is that the learning activities that we in our faculty have been prioritizing for quite some time, the sort of authentic learning activities and getting students to disaggregate complex questions, giving students carefully scaffolded tasks as part of learning, kind of going through the learning curve of what research might entail and what writing, reflective and critical writing might entail. Those are things that are still not necessarily the strengths of these platforms. So it's not about, it's ChatGPT, whichever generations and similar platforms can write well, but we want our students to be able to think through writing and do that for themselves. And how do we get there? There's exciting ways in which you can play with the chatbots as well, but how do you do that with and without these digital environments?
Okay, I've got a completely different angle on this. I'm not 100% sure that it's necessary to let our students write anymore in future, if ChatGPT can do that, right? I mean, we have to actually get students ready for the world in which these large language models, is it on? In which these large language models actually do this basis work for them. So we have to think, what is critical thinking, and how do we get to the product that must function in the workplace in this new world. So I mean, we don't teach everybody. I mean, we teach our school kids to use calculators. I'm not sure that it's necessary to teach our students to write in future. We can use writing in some way to enhance learning. But I mean, the tools will do it for us. And there are so many now, and they are so good, and they will just get better. So yeah, I'm alternative there.
Any other questions, colleagues, from the floor before we go online? None.
the first question.
Thank you. I just want to know that we do not, I'm a programmer, but I cannot write that program that you wrote.
I also can't.
So no, I also asked ChatGPT to write me some Java or some C++, and so when I need it. But I think when we have that kind of knowledge, then we can share it with everyone. And then just as an interface, we as lecturers just say we're looking for this context and these things, and then it generates. So please don't go away.
Good morning, colleagues. Alvin from Education. Thank you, Tony, colleague. My concern is our institutional educational space still safe? How does AI intervene with our work? Will we still be needed in the future, 10 years from now, 2034? Are we creating a zombie nation where machine learning takes over? An example is I uploaded a month ago something that is called on my phone readout. And you know what does readout do when I lecture? It takes all the vocal representation of myself, put it into a digital format, and I can disseminate it to my students. So if there's a student that were not there, I can just post that readout script to him, and he will have myself in the writing format. So is our educational institution safe? That's my question. Will we be needed within the next 10 to 15 years? Or does machine learning multiply so fast that I'm worried now?
This is like an extremely difficult question. I don't know if anyone wants to try and take it, but I can give my estimation. So my last estimation I remember seeing was that ChatGPT had a written IQ of something like 140. So in other words, if the exponential curve keeps going, it'll have an IQ of 300, 600, 900, 1000. So it's going to be impossible to compete with it. That's one thing I'm sure of. So for the institution to survive, in my mind, it will need to adopt a strategy that uses it. And that's the only thing I can think of answering to, towards survival of the institution.
Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot. I mean, disruption is a big theme, and what exactly disruption entails. Higher education institutions has always been the bastion of access to information, right? For a very, very long time, the books were only in libraries, and students could only really access it and learning through lecturers or professors or whatever. That's the model. But I mean, that has already been eroded in such a big way that access to information, I mean, students have more access to information than any of us can handle, right? You just need access to the internet or phone. Okay. So what is the only thing that we as higher education institutions still have? And that is basically assessment or your accreditation, right? We still own the assessment level of a graduate, and it's an understandable assessment for that graduate to go into the workplace. But that is the only thing that actually at this stage stand between us and disruption. I mean, I just this morning got a whole explanation of personalized AI-based learning, right? Where all the content, as well as the assessment, as well as everything is basically delivered to a student as a personalized individual. We can't do that. Okay, we as people can't. So anyway, that's again my very alternative opinion. I think we have to think very critically about the role of higher education in the future of this digital world.
I think that, you know, in your presentation earlier on, I really liked the point that you were making about digital -first world and your, you know, the argument that you were making for, I think the words that you used is an ontological reversal of digital and physical worlds. And I think that this kind of apparent ontological reversal and the way in which our realities are increasingly shaped by what happens in what happens in and through digital technologies is very interesting to consider in our in the souths of the world and the southern spaces, if I may put it like that, of the world. As you know, we don't have people in Africa and in Southern Africa don't have equal access to digital technologies. At the same time, there's a long history. One could think about this as part of our colonial past, our colonizing past, that technologies that we've been, the terrain upon which the technological experiments happen. So, you know, if you think about the way in which the very interesting scholarship and writing about how forms of digital identification and biometric technologies were pioneered in South Africa and put in place in South Africa quite a long time before they were used in other parts of the world. So I'm thinking of the sort of social welfare payment systems that worked through digital fingerprinting and so on, and that was pioneered. The beginnings of that you can see in the late 1980s. Not the biometric aspect, but the way in which these digital technologies were being pioneered, and then the biometric aspect is integrated with that. So I think that for me, when I think about how we teach, I have to keep in mind the differential access that we have in South Africa and that our students have to digital technologies. We are still teaching if we try out a hybrid classroom in terms of access to, you know, teaching students, some of who are remote and some of who are present. Students fade in and out, those who are online. So students do not have perfect access to these technologies. And this is one of the many reasons why I think that teaching students argument through retaining the capacity to teach with the variety of affordances that we have, pen and paper, being present in a classroom together is very, very powerful. And you know, you do know that we in the humanities disagree with you about writing. The point is that, I mean, it could be exciting if we start our arguments, our scholarly arguments of the future are also with particular, you know, digitally entities that only exist in digital spaces. But at the moment, this is not where we are at the moment. And what we teach our students what we want to teach our students we want to induct our students, invite our students into the world of conversation that happens through writing. And I think that one of the most profound contributions that the institutions of higher education can make is to enable students to engage reflexively and critically to understand the socio-economic and political impacts and implications of, you know, how we are being willy-nilly drawn into these technologies, which AI technologies are being applied in very, very powerfully and distressingly as part of warfare at the moment. This is not something that's new, but it's been taken to new levels in places like, say, in Israel's attacks on Gaza. So there are real issues that we have to address with our students about the application of these technologies and what they mean.
Okay, I've got nothing to add. Any more questions?
Thank you so much, Dr. Dutoit. I'd like us to take one online question. I think some of the other questions we may pose towards the end because there's a barrage of online questions, but we're heading towards our tea break. So we're just aware that people are also, but yeah. So we'll take one onto online now, but there is going to be a session where we can bring in all of those other comments in that moderation session. Yeah.
Okay, from Anonymous, currently many lecturers or even departments arrange training for their students for the use of different digital tools that are used in learning and teaching. This is often on an ad hoc basis, but more digital tools, AI and others, are introduced at an increasing rate. Do we see a future where a more structured training workshop / course is offered to every incoming UWC student to prepare them for this increasing complexity and to teach perhaps with one voice the ethical considerations and good practices related to the use of these tools, more especially for tools that support reading and writing?
Okay, since I have the microphone, I'll start. I think it's critically important to do that. I mean, there's no way our students will enter a workplace without some of these tools, and to be able to assess what they're dealing with, as well as how their interactions with the digital world influences this digital first, I think it's just crucial. You know, I'm always trying to think, what is the workspace that my student is going to enter? And I mean, for me in computer science, that is just at this stage unthinkable. I'm really unsure how that is going to be, but the use of these tools are critical. Again, how to use them ethically, how to integrate them in such a way that you know, I don't know how to say it, stay true to the basic principles that we try to instill in our graduates, right? So that's my answer.
Yeah, I think that's a good question, and it's a timely question. I think that it's really important that it's important to also keep in mind that, well, on the one hand, the monetized platforms can be used in all kinds of creative ways if one applies the possibilities carefully. Also for learning how to write and for critical thinking and so on. It's also important to remember that there are really interesting projects that are even some of the big players in this field have maintained some commitments to working with universities and higher education institutions on really interesting platforms that are geared towards scholarly activities. I mean, one of the I'm sure there's many that I don't know about, but one of the ones that I've been looking at is Semantic Scholar, just to use one example, which has a rather good algorithmic search possibilities for scholarship, and they have it's a bit like a PDF type reading environment that's pedagogically very interesting, and that's where at the moment it's activated for computer science literature and not much beyond that. I assume that they have to broker agreements with various sort of academic journal publishers in order to build the system. But it's really very interesting as a kind of a powerful tool with which to read that also draws attention to how one can read well. So there's a range of very interesting possibilities here.
This is a really good question because it's so difficult to keep up at the moment. A structured system or a structured learning about the tools available is absolutely necessary. But as the tools are made available, that structured learning becomes obsolete. So it's really difficult to keep up. So in essence, you would need a team to be extremely on top of things to keep us updated. An example for this, I couldn't finish my personalized reporting to the students with Sakai. So Sakai had no ability to do that. So in essence, Sakai is actually obsolete for what I needed it to do. So that system that we're using is already in a sense obsolete to keep up with the systems coming out. And as I'm saying this, there are a bunch of systems and new programs coming out that's advancing the field that we need to be aware of. So the lecturers, all of the lecturers would need to be upskilled to search for the programs first and to teach it. So that's really a difficult thing to do, but that's what would be necessary.
Thanks. Yeah. So just to add, I think that is also a fantastic question. And I think I'm going to pose a question back. So what are the ethical issues if we don't train students on the use of AI? What if you have a pharmacist or doctor or any professional student going out there being qualified that does not know how to use AI? And now they're in a workplace that's evolving and constantly changing and they don't know about it. So I think to answer that question from my perspective, yes. So I just picture it as an introductory module, any type of communication, writing, anything like that. I definitely think it should be included there. And yeah, as Eddie said, as well for staff as well. Thanks.
Thank you so much, colleagues. Great questions. Some of those questions we will pick up in the second session, but also this conversation doesn't end today, so we are going to be keeping those questions. I would like to announce that we're going to break for about 10 minutes for lunch, not lunch, but a light mid-morning tea. But now obviously heading towards 12, so it's not longer mid-morning. But we'll be back around at 12 to start with Dr. Stoltenkamp's draft guidelines, presentation on the draft guidelines. And then after that, it will be the moderated session. So can you please be back by 12 promptly? Thank you. Thank you very much to the presenters. Thank you. Thank you. Pause, but we can start as soon as we possibly can. Okay, so now thanks, colleagues. Okay, so the first part, we've had presentations from the academics and teaching and learning learning and teaching specialists within different faculties to understand how they are approaching AI. With this part of the workshop now, or of the conversation, it's one focused on presenting the draft guidelines, and then two, getting in a moderator to sort of wrap everything we've sort of gone through over the past couple of hours into one. So I think post in that there would be a Q&A session, but I just want to indicate again that post this conversation, we are always open to engagements on this issue. So it doesn't end here today in terms of comments. So if you feel like you want to say anything, you can always send us an email. So I'll now hand over to Dr. Stoltenkamp, and then she'll start off our second session.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I'm just waiting for the presentation. Thank you, Dr. Brown, for inviting me to speak here on behalf of all of us that have developed the draft guidelines. And this is exactly what you intended. We've heard so many speakers, and somebody used the word disruption. Definitely, our world has been disrupted, and higher education has been disrupted. And it's not a one-man show. So we are being called to these spaces because it's not traditional spaces anymore. So there's new relationships being formed, and we have to reimagine our spaces. We heard the different arguments that are coming. And so we together here, I'm not going to read our guidelines, Dr. Brown. I'll be going through them briefly. And then Professor Jacques Joubert, he will be moderating the session. And we are here so that nobody can also say afterwards, but we were excluded from the guidelines. You've been called to participate in these guidelines. And thank you to all who presented, because we can see there are so many critical processes when we reimagine our spaces. The people are speaking about participation. We need to reflect. We need to interrogate. We need to construct, and we need to negotiate new spaces. And it's definitely not a silo mentality. So you cannot send your AI problem to a Jacques or to CIECT or to Raymond in ICS, but it's going to take all of us. So Vanessa, we have to form partnerships. We have real issues. As much as it's fascinating, it's also scary, because all of us, academics, professional support staff, library, yesterday the library also had a great webinar on AI. And our faculties, our centers, our external partners, and all the technologies, our processes, all of it is going to have to come together into guidelines that are going to be changing, Jacques, continuously, you know. And then also, Vanessa, very important for you as well, how does it align to our policies eventually? So I will just be going quickly through that. I want to thank the task team, and also a big thanks to the very active members in the task team. So these were just a few representatives. That's why it's draft AI. But Dr. Brown has called you here today because we need to take this to another level now. More stakeholders need to get involved in order for us to come to a, can I say, quote, final guidelines. One of the principles is around fostering innovation and excellence. And I don't have to say much about that. You can see all the previous presenters, all the fantastic AI tools that's already out there. These are very smart machines. But what are we going to do here? We have to get together. We have to foster innovation and excellence within our spaces. And who is it? Academic, research, community engagement, professional and administrative domains. We are all in this. And then, Vanessa, we're going to have to think about how these new spaces are cross-cutting within our broader integrated operating plan. And that's very important. Another category within our draft guidelines speaks about collaborative and coherent institutional stance. And that was basically my introduction. We need to establish a coherent institutional stance. I think it's going to be very difficult, Jacques. As you can see, there are many arguments coming out of this. But we owe it to our students that we find some coherence while we embrace. And through our principles, we encourage ethical conduct, academic integrity, strengthened learning, teaching, research, decision-making, and operational efficiency. And it's come through in the previous speakers. We've heard this a lot this morning, Vanessa. People are concerned about pre-engagement and literacy. So this is an important category. We're going to have to assess the foundational AI understanding. I like what one of the pharmacy speakers also, was it Eddie and Cole? Are you Alex? You were speaking about Alex. He's at the foundation. He's at that level, and then others are at another level. At what level are our students? We are going to have to assess that. And not only of our students, our academics, our researchers. And we're going to have to discuss the motivations and benefits. I don't know, it's going to have to be continuous, maybe brown bag lunches, Vanessa, continuous webinars. It's not just one person. Say maybe in science, there's Honji. Is everybody just going to go to you, Honji, about this AI? How are you going to have to implement? It's going to take, for example, many of your colleagues within the science faculty to think about these innovations. And then to cultivate AI literacy. Is it only CIECT that must do it? No, we all have to cultivate this literacy. And then only through that, we will be able to develop an advocacy. I'm not reading every word, Vanessa, because I have my presentation and the guidelines were presented at SAP, and I think it's being distributed throughout. And here I use an example, because I thought otherwise we're just presenting pie in the sky. No, already on the ground. Remember, the students are using it. This was an example from Jacques. He shared a report. I did share it with the campus. He had an assignment for a pharmaceutical assignment. And what did Jacques do with those students? The first level, he broke it into familiarity and motivation. This is where he actually sat with his students and spoke about the tools that they might use or may not use, what's available. Because remember, he's not the be-all and end-all, so you can advise. And then he spoke about the AI integration and benefits for their understanding. And also you need to go to the level of the specific task. Can you imagine if you just stand there and they say, there's these tools out there, those tools, they know it, they're there. We need to start speaking to them on an academic level. How are those tools going to benefit the specific task? Easier said than done. I think it's a lot of work into that. So that's linked to cultivating AI literacy. It wasn't just a specific unit, but there was a lecturer within his class that's already cultivating AI literacy. We are trying our best also, Dr. Brown. We're sending out blogs, you know, around AI, whether it's for research purposes, for postgraduate students, also to enhance productivity for administrators. We're also calling people to training, where we've embedded some of the AI into the ICT training packages. So remember, AI is starting, it's infiltrating us, it's permeating. So even our facilitation is going to change, because these tools are embedded within the other packages. And then this links to another category, integration benefits across institutional domains. So the university perceives AI as a cornerstone of modernization. That is our stance. And as an enabler, we've heard a lot about this morning. How can we augment? How can we enable for scaling new heights in academic achievement, research excellence, and administrative excellency? So that stance, as you can see, we're with you. It's not going away. But we need to see now how we are going to use it. And we're encouraging an open, progressive approach, not a silo approach, but like I said previously. And then, Dr. Brown, our leaders, I know we are all leaders and all leadership perspective, but if there's going to be funding, etc., we need to think on that level as well about a progressive approach in investment as well, because things are progressing. I know, Khonji, you organized with Science, for example, the other day. There were people marketing AI tools, an entire system. And then through those discussions, we knew there were many processes that you need to follow. But at the end, what did it come down to? Do you have a proposal that could possibly go to Money Regal? Will money be released? So we need our top exec also, Vanessa, to understand what we're doing on the ground needs to infiltrate into the coffers as well. And then, so our AI-driven approach is not just limited to internal processes. I think it was Jacques, it was you and others. There was a project launched the other day. Not all of us could go, so I'm sure you'd be able to share again with us. Yes, so AI maturity assessment frameworks. Look how fast things are growing. And here was an example of Jacques and others that have called industry into the picture. We cannot just speak about AI alone. So part of our guidelines, we're saying that it should not only be limited to an internal process. And for example, Shyama's here from the library. She also had some interesting external speakers yesterday at the webinar. It's very important that we reach out to others. Big on the agenda, one of the criteria ethical considerations and transparencies. Now, Vanessa, the rubber hits the road. We can't just have webinars on fantastic tools and show what people using in their alone at home or in their offices. What's happening on the ground? So all stakeholders, we are saying, must transparently disclose when submitting academic research and other materials. This is a suggestion. We are saying engage in dialogues to clarify ethical considerations. Don't just assume that your students know what it is to be ethical around using these tools. That's very important. Establish faculty and departmental guidelines. Vanessa has called us all here today. You are thinking about your guidelines parallel to these institutional guidelines. And consult citation style guides for commonly used citations. I just used this as an example. This was from one of our sister institutions, but it's available. Every time a student submits an assignment into the LMS, the student must, Jacques, submit a plagiarism declaration form to each assignment, Sam, not just an external or essay or whatever. Every assignment you submit, tutorials, whatever, the plagiarism declaration form is attached to the assignment. That plagiarism declaration form was so clear, Jacques. It's your own work. You understand plagiarism, but within the module, right at the start, it's instilled. What is plagiarism? How do I cite? So all those fantastic tools, I think the Writing Center has some, you have some. Vanessa, it's already placed in the module at the start when the student is orientated into their module. But this university is very strict. Every tutorial, essay, every assignment, you will submit your declaration form. And it also goes through Turnitin when you submit it into the LMS. The plagiarism or similarity index score is shown, and they actually warn the students, like, when it's high, come and see me. We need to have a discussion. So there are many universities now as well, Jacques, they're actually teaching you how to cite correctly, even when you use AI. You have to cite AI in your essays, and they're actually showing you how to cite AI. So what was the prompt you put in? What was the date? It's very important because we're going to be using AI. So if you've used AI, disclose and cite AI. This is the way the world is going. And then to continue with Jacques' example, for example, for the pharmacy students, at this stage, the students then displayed a commendable level of responsibility. And they were talking about sourcing, copyrights, and specific AI tools. And then interestingly, the students then expressed a belief in the importance of clear guidelines when using AI. So the students want guidelines from us. It's important. They do want it. And then, Vanessa, this is obviously going to impact on our governance, our privacy, and ethical concerns. And there's going to be dispute resolutions. So I'm sure there's a lot of that going to come up, where maybe a lecturer, there's a very high plagiarism, and then maybe there's a proctor. So there are many things we need to think about dispute resolutions for undergraduate and postgraduate students. I'm not going to read that. And then another category within the guidelines, challenges, risks, and recommendations. And this is, some of you spoke about this already. And I know, Jennifer, you also focus on this about our discernment when we use that critical engagement with the AI, very important. And Vanessa, there's been a call, so we've integrated this into the guidelines. We can see that we probably need to design and develop an institutional AI module. And I think we can all collaborate on that. And it'd probably be a module that would permeate throughout all faculties, and it's just an awareness. And I can see that module, it can just grow, you know, and then you can have the arguments. I mean, there was our computer scientists, they have an argument, our humanities, but we're going to have to give our students some structure. I know you're saying they're tech savvy, they've got all these tools. When you were a student, you were first year, some of you mentioned, some people don't know how to write yet, and then there's all these tools, and then you're called in by a lecturer to say, you've abused AI, you're getting naught. But you've had no understanding yet of what our stance is and how they should use these tools. So it's our responsibility. Here was just an example. I've used this before. We know some of the biases of ChatGPT, for example. In history, for example, we know there's a lot of bias from the northern globe hemisphere. We see that they have biases on, for example, how factories were developed, how the Industrial Revolution came about. And then the lecturer put in a prompt and she got ChatGPT's view. The view was very northern based. Their view was on how Industrial Revolution, we were all told that in the history books, formed in England. And then the lecturer gives two different views, two different articles. And there we see what happened on those colonized areas of the Caribbean, and the entire slave trade, and how much they brought to the thinking around Industrial Revolution. And then she tells the students, critically look at these two articles and what ChatGPT has spewed out, and then compare. So again, like some of us have said, it's important that students write and critically engage, but you again, the lecturer was very clear about what the student must do. And so that's very important. Very different to pharmacy, but you can see in the humanities, it's not. I'm not going to go through this. Also to speak to you about things have improved. Last year, we generated, Jacques, some images from Mid-Journey, and we could see, yes, 2 minutes, we could see when you asked at that time for a woman with healthy hair, we saw a lot of images, white people. Whenever you asked hair, it was mainly images of white, even a graduation of a photo of a professor or a man with healthy hair. It was mainly white. And I'm sure things have improved since then. But then we need to teach our students. And even when you said graduate photo, also mainly white. ChatGPT spewed out last year. So just some of the biases, and some of it was ridiculous, distorted images at that time, but it really has progressed. Anti-plagiarism and verification, I'm not going to go into that. You know, this is very important. Vanessa, we have maintained a developmental approach. When Jacques and I discussed this for a long time, Turnitin is not new. Jennifer, we've never said, we've told the lecturers when they come, set your assignment so the student can maybe submit 2 or 3 times to improve their similarity index score, to improve their writing. So you cannot just rely on these tools that are available now. They are also still in beta version. I just want you to know, Turnitin. We're still waiting now for the AI tools. I'll announce it soon. They were in beta version. So then I had to source another system. So we're using CopyLeaks, and they were ready. Again, those are similarity reports. You still need to engage with your student in a discussion regarding those scores. But I know CopyLeaks has got like a 99% accuracy almost now, Jacques, for improving. And I think Turnitin wants to sort of compete with them, so you can imagine. So these platforms are also, so this, you can see I've got no students' names here or whatever, but some of the AI is quite scary. That was 82%. So that was really abuse of AI there. And I'm sure the student had to disclose that. And then the others, I mean, the students were quite good, 23% and lower. So we can see that lecturers are starting to speak to them and use it, but think about what you're doing. Shame, I don't know what that student tried with using AI. Just yeah, so that student really needs some assistance. For example, you know, with Turnitin, here's my report. So I've put it in before. I've written other reports. You see, my score was quite high. But if I go to Turnitin, it shows it's my paper, my reports. It's been submitted before. And then it also goes to the Seed WordPress where we send our blogs. And then it's 1% for others. So even us, when we do our reports and stuff, put it into Turnitin. It's important. Also see maybe if we are also plagiarizing others, it's very important what we're doing. So it's not only the students, it's us as well. Yeah. And then Jacques, I'm almost done, Vanessa. Jacques then discussed these Turnitin scores. It's not just this is the same assignment, all the steps he had to follow. So he looked at the Turnitin scores, and then some of it was high. For him, 15% was high. That wasn't too high, but okay. But then he looked at it closely when he discussed, and he could see that it was the original work. It was related to other factors, common sources. So that's important. And then also spoke about potential recommendations. And then the last category within the guidelines, continuous development and digital transformation. And this came through this morning. We're going to have to continuously train and support. Again, is it only CIECT? No. Shyam and I were just discussing the library plays such an important part for training and support as well. Our faculties, our teaching and learning specialists, our writing center is going to be so important, Vanessa, now around this AI drive. It's so important. Yeah, I'm done. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, colleagues. So we're swiftly heading into the moderated session. So Dr. Stoltenkamp, along with the rest of the presenters, can come in front. Professor Joubert will just give an overview, but we're now trying to wrap things all together. So there may be questions, comments from the presenters that they would like to give based on the moderator's wrap up. So if Prof. Herber, Prof. Chips, Alex and Eddie, Dr. Dutoit, Dr. Stoltenkamp. Who else am I missing? I think I'm missing one more. CHS. Oh, yes, no, Prof. Chips, yes. Yes. Pharmacy. I'm missing one more. Oh, yes, education, yes. It's now an ending session.
Okay, thank you, everybody. And thank you, Dr. Brown, for inviting me to facilitate this session. Much appreciated. So from my side, I'm from School of Pharmacy in the Faculty of Natural Sciences. And many people have asked me, what does a pharmacist know about AI? This guy has no information on computer sciences and so on. But I can tell you that for the past year and a half, I've used AI daily. And I've really pushed AI to its limits. Like, for instance, I've asked ChatGPT how to make an atom bomb. So, for instance, in the beginning, it would give me actually a how-to guide, how to make an atom bomb. And then what happened now, yesterday I asked the same question. And now it says, I can't help you with that. So it's already been built in. Those ethical stuff has been built in by OpenAI, the guys who developed these things. Another thing that I was just thinking about, and it's a bit controversial, if you go onto the internet, and you Google just for a pornographic site, you would get that site. If you ask ChatGPT, it tells you, can't help you with that. So that's already been built in. So they're looking at the ethics and how to use these tools ethically. But I was sitting there at the back and I didn't participate in any of the discussions. The reason for that is that I've been developing on ChatGPT whilst I was sitting there, a GPT or an agent that can actually assist us at UWC on how to integrate AI into education. So this is like a facilitator. Now on ChatGPT 4, which I'm using, I mean, ChatGPT 3.5 is stupid, really. But ChatGPT 4 is really, it's much, much better. I think ChatGPT 3.5 has an IQ of 90, whereas this thing has an IQ of about 140. And now if you augment it with human capabilities, I think that IQ goes even higher. So we've trained this GPT, and the GPT has now been trained, and you can see in the instructions, this GPT is designed to exclusively to facilitate AI integration into education at UWC. So what I did, I actually was typing on a Word document everything that we discussed this morning, trained the document on that. I trained it on the invite. I trained it on the email that Dr. Brown sent me for the facilitation. I used the university's IOP and trained it on that. I used the guidelines from Dr. Stoltenkamp, and I trained this GPT. So this GPT is now trained specifically for UWC. But what can be done with this? It's not stopped here, because we can configure and we can create. And that's where the collaboration comes in, where many people need to provide their insights. From the students to the academic staff, to technical staff, to administrators, everybody needs to provide input. And the more input you get, the better this model becomes. So it's an iterative process. So then I asked the model, after I've trained it, and I was sitting there in the tea break, make a mind map of everything that was discussed this morning at this seminar. And you can already see it's given us UWC AI integration across faculties with health sciences, the key issues, like, for instance, using AI responsibly to maintain a student-centered learning approach, Jennifer. Like, for instance, in law, the discussion points, AI to draft contracts and legal documents, that's an issue. So all of those things have now already been built into the GPT, and we can very easily and quickly now generate this type of information. I also then asked it to make this map of integration into the different faculties. So that's very much the same as the previous one. And here also, what were the main issues that we discussed this morning? What were the things that people were telling us that that we really need to consider with the integration of AI at UWC, not just with teaching and learning, but with research and administration? Ethical considerations, the ethical and transparent use of AI. Impact on learning outcomes. It's already impacted learning outcomes. There's plagiarism. And I can talk about plagiarism probably for a day. And I can tell you now that I think that ChatGPT, if you use it properly, it's not plagiarism. But I'll get to that just now. Academic integrity, personalization versus standardization. Should we have personalized AI tools for each student? Or should we as lecturers standardize a specific tool for each and every module, or for each and every faculty, or whatever we decide? Personalization, that may be an issue, because the student will train it on their own data. Whereas a standardized type of tutor, we train that AI tutor, and that's possible. I've already developed a number of tutors. Actually, I have a teaching assistant, a teaching tutor that I also trained on ChatGPT 4 that actually tells me what I need to lecture every day. So I just click a button and it gives me that information. AI in the research, plagiarism challenges, administrative efficiencies, we need to improve that, and we can now. Job market preparation. Peter Geldenhuys gave a presentation a month ago or so to UWC, and he's the AI guru in South Africa. And he said, if you're not using AI tools and you not know how to use it, and you use it ethically and efficiently, you will not be employable in 5 years' time. So if you go and you sit in an interview and you're competing with somebody who knows how to use AI, but how to use AI properly, then you're not going to get that job. They're rather going to employ somebody else. And that was he saying, and I agree with him. And also another thing that Professor Liz Archer said, is that AI won't take our jobs, but those who use AI will. But it's not those who use AI just for plagiarism or just writing a single prompt. It's those who are using it properly, ethically, transparently, openly, and telling the people that I'm using AI, how I'm using it. You're using it by referencing it, citing it, showing your work that was AI generated. How did you get to that specific AI generated content, and so on and so on. Now, on my next slide, this is then just the table that I generated while I was sitting there at the back. on the critical discussion points that we as a panel will get to just now. The ethical use, academic integrity already gives us a description of what we discuss. So for instance, if we look at student data privacy, ensure the protection of student data as AI tools are integrated into learning platforms. So these are the type of things that we need to think about and where we need your feedback. So this is also a call to action where all of us need to work collaboratively. We can't work in silos. Juliet said them on the silo thing, and I've seen this many times at UWC, where people work in silos, but this time I'm having that call to action where we need to collaborate. And I'll get to something that we did just a few months ago on the power of collaboration, the power of human AI collaboration. So Eddie spoke about that chess, computers beating a chess player. That was in 1997. They did another experiment where they used AI to play against humans, not just one human, a team of humans who collaborated and was able to beat the AI. So collaboration is key. Collaboration is key. Now, Juliet also spoke about that. I'm involved with this AI intelligence or AI maturity framework for South Africa. So this is not just for UWC, but it's for the whole of South Africa. Last year, Liz and I, Elizabeth Archer and we wrote a tender for this German company who actually then gave the tender to UWC to develop a maturity framework for South Africa. And this is taking up all of my time because it's a massive project that we work with GIZ, government, CSIR, chartered accountants, and with the Institute of the Fourth Industrial Revolution. Fourth Industrial Revolution, what is the Fourth Industrial Revolution? AI. AI, technology, AI is the Fourth Industrial Revolution. So we've been working on this artificial intelligence framework, and this framework is basically a guideline for us how we can in South Africa effectively integrate AI and improve AI's capabilities, and then we pave the way for future. Yes. Humanly, yeah. I'll get to that just now. Okay, thank you. So just to show you what we've been doing there, and then also the AI readiness framework for UWC, and then also the integration of a multilingual tool within AI. And then this is the other stuff that I wanted to get to, but maybe we should hand over then to a few questions. I just wanted to use the first 10 minutes to do an overview presentation of everything that was discussed today. But let's move over to questions then. Are there any questions from the audience? Okay, so this one was also one that I generated using this AI tool on the AI readiness framework for UWC. And this one is based on the framework that we have developed or that we are developing for South Africa. So I just integrated this now to UWC using our IOP. And this is what it reckons that we should do for AI readiness at UWC. We should first have a vision and a strategy, define our AI vision, governance and policy, where we need to craft AI policies, craft different policies on how to reference AI, how to integrate AI, the ethical guidelines on how to do AI. And I've done quite a bit of work on that as well. Infrastructure and technology. We are not ready at UWC to integrate AI properly. Our ICS is not properly integrated already with AI. It will cost money, it will cost data centers, and it will also cost a lot of computing power to really integrate that. I see a future where we can integrate AI into eCanva as well, but that's something that we'll have to set up. Faculty and staff development, very, very important to develop them. Like Juliet said, we need training courses that will assist everybody on campus, not just students, but actually academics as well. Then there's many other things. In the last one, there's stakeholder collaboration. This is very important, and that's the call to action that I have for all of us to get involved, to voice our opinions on AI, and to make sure that we develop this framework properly. There's just one last thing that I wanted to show. I won't go through all of these others. So, Mzansi Met. Mzansi is an AI tool that we are developing here at UWC. It's a AI tool that aims to offer instant, accurate, and culturally sensitive translations for effective healthcare communication in South Africa. So this grant was written in 1 week. It was written to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and within 1 week, we were able to leverage AI and leverage the human and AI collaborative power to write a grant application to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it was approved. We were successful with that grant. We got 1.6 million rand to actually use to develop this AI tool here at UWC. How did we do that? And this is where I'm now going to ask where we all need to get in, where I'll give some opportunity to the panel as well, is initial brainstorming. This is basically what we've been doing today. I've taken your comments, I've taken some of the concerns and the key issues, and I've given it to the AI. So that's the human side of it. And now the AI listens to our initial brainstorming. Now we got AI-driven suggestions. So that was those mind maps and everything. And so there may still be some inaccuracies. There may be some hallucinations. There may be things that I didn't hear properly and put into the AI that we need to now refine. Then we get to the human decision points. And that's where the review comes in. We're reviewing the guidelines now. We're providing additional input. Human decision points, not just AI-driven. Iterative refinements between human and AI. Get to AI-powered analysis. AI can analyze data 100 to 1,000 times faster than humans. So there's a lot of opportunity for AI-powered analysis, and I've done that many times with great success that I'll talk to in a different forum. Feedback integration, again, becomes important. Again, the human collaboration with AI. And what we found with this, we were 14 people who worked together on this grant application that we wrote in a week. We used a WhatsApp group. And like Miriam Parker said, there was sometimes just brain farts. And in the middle of the night that came through. We used that brain fart, developed it into a prompt, used prompt engineering, chain density prompting, and I put it into this system. Previously, it took us about 10 months to a year to write a grant application to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and we were unsuccessful. This took us a week, and we were successful. And we indicated in that application that we used AI, and this was the process that we used. We referenced AI. We said that we used AI ethically, transparently. We had a big statement in there of what we did, what type of tools that we use, which prompts that we use. So do you think that with this process, so that application was actually AI generated, but with the human in the loop approach, is this still plagiarism? It's intellectual capacity. Without us, without a team of 14 people working together, that application would have never existed. So it's intellectual property, it's intellectual input, and we've used this, and with this iterative refined process, that's why we further need to talk about plagiarism. And when is it actually plagiarism? Because copy leaks, I can bypass copy leaks easily. And we've spoken about that as well. I can actually train a model to write exactly like I do. I can just give it some of my emails, and it will write exactly and make mistakes that I do in my writing. So copy leaks is basically, in my opinion, it's not that much of an advantage because students will bypass that. Okay, so that was my story, my brief story. Now I will hand over to the audience if there is any further questions that you would like to ask, and then I will facilitate it. Yes.
Okay, there were different presentations. The first one, is about the searching for when I have to start referencing AI. So when I search now, I search, the first question is how to play hockey. I get an answer, but it's not good enough. So I search again how to play hockey using a hockey stick and a hard ball. It's a different answer. So which one do I cite? Because at the end of the day, I want that one answer of how to play hockey. That's the first question.
Okay. Can I give that to the panel? We have another mic.
I suggest that you take a couple of questions.
Okay. Do you want to ask your next question as well?
They're like using simple examples. So I am from Gauteng in Nigel, where there's almost no internet, no cell phones, or anything. And then Mfundo right there was is from Camps Bay. So we're sitting in the same class. He knows exactly how to use a laptop, how to use AI. My first time having a cell phone here, I'm using a Huawei where he has an iPhone. So he knows exactly how to use ChatGPT for an assignment. He always gets 80s. I keep getting 40s because I've got no idea how to use it. Is there a tool that they have here or library, or is there a center or something that can assist me as someone from the East Rand who knows nothing how to do my assignments? And then do we get marked? Is the assessment then fair for me and for him when we submit the same assignment in class? And then my last question is about the Mzansi app. Once again, I am from Nigeria. We don't have cell phones. My grandmother is sick. She still doesn't get the proper healthcare that Mfundo's parents get, who's in Camps Bay, who has access to a cell phone. So will that Mzansi Med app also again help those who can help themselves, or are we again in Nigeria not privileged like Mfundo's family is?
Okay, so I'll hand that over to the panel. The first question was on how to properly reference AI. I have an answer on that, if I may. So I actually have a guideline document that I shared with my students as well as part of the third year pharmacy class, where I actually developed comprehensive guidelines on how to cite AI. This was done in collaboration with other colleagues as well, and in collaboration with AI. So the proper way of citing it is you use OpenAI with the date and whatever you used it for, and the exact date when you accessed OpenAI. What you can then do is also provide your prompts. So for instance, you provide the prompt, your first prompt that you use and the second prompt that you use. You said the second one was better. Then you can use that second prompt, you put it as within your reference, and then you can say that the following was generated and then reference it in the text. So that was generated by the AI. You gave your initial prompt, which is your intellectual input. You've looked at the information, and now you decided that the second prompt gave you better information, and that is what you then put into your assignment or whatever. So you use that. What I also told my students what they can do is to provide annexures of their complete interaction with AI as well. Because it's, as you would have seen, it's not just one single prompt. If you ask just one single prompt, it gives you a stupid answer. So garbage in equals garbage out. So single prompt, but then they use chain density prompting. First start with a short prompt, build on that prompt a little bit more, build on that prompt a little bit more, until they have a very comprehensive prompt. I've had prompts that were pages long based on how you use chain density prompting. So you increase the density of your prompting. And the students are using that as well. And then they add that as an annexure to their assignment. In that way, they are transparent and they then reference it properly as well. I can make that document available, Dr. Brown. That's quite useful. Yeah. Yes. And then there's another one.
I'd like to try and respond to another part of what you were saying. And I did find that I think what you gave us just now is a very, very interesting and useful example of how at the level of a particular course, students need these very specific framings and sort of enabling frameworks from lecturers. But I think that what's very important for me to hear from, I don't think, you know, listening to you, one of the things that I think I sensed was how easily one can feel intimidated by people who have like the latest technology, the latest phone, who sort of whizzing with their fingers on that. And I think that it's a difficult experience. It's hard to experience that. And I think that one of the things that we as a university need to do is to enable all our students to to be able to make use of the technology that they do have available to them, so that you get to that point where you feel that your fingers are also flying, you know, and for that reason, I think the kinds of interventions that you are making about the importance of getting all our students on board with working creatively and intelligently with these technologies are very important. Yeah. So that's what I would like to say. Yeah.
Now, quickly, I don't think I hear you. Another point of view, we shouldn't feel intimidated, because I remember when we started e-learning, I mean with LMSs, the same thing. When we started that time, people said, "Go away here. What are you doing here? This culture is not ready." So what if we had to go away? So we started from scratch. And where were we? We were on that level. So on a continuum, we will always have those that are on one end of the continuum, very advanced, and the others that are starting. So it's for us to see to all. But for me, it's like you set a benchmark. This is where the world is going. And just at that time when we were introducing e-learning and people told me, "Go back to Joburg, what are you doing here?" It's the same thing. So that seems like so arc age now, but this is exactly where you are now. We are there, and then we have to bring others along. And maybe in 5 years' time, we all there where you are now, and you're at another level. But you still today, and when COVID hit us, shock, there were people that had still not created an online environment 15 years later, and they were scuttling. So this is what's going to happen to us. We need to now continuously think about, yes, the digital divide, but we cannot see others as intimidating. We need to get there and bring everybody along. But I hear you.
I wanted to say the same thing though. I think we have to provide guidance at a low level for people that it's new and they don't know what to use, because it's completely overwhelming. But there has to be flexibility so that people can explore different things. But I think for us, for example, I know my students want guidance. They want to know, which one should I use? What must I do? How do I use it? Because there's not a high level of literacy, digital literacy in some of the classes.
Thanks. Okay, I've got two comments. The one is actually that we have to be very, very sensitive about what this technology is doing with regards to the digital divide in South Africa. And I absolutely support you. You know, it's just, I'm not sure how we're going to build it into the frameworks or stuff. But I mean, people with money have access to technologies that people that don't have money don't have. So we really have to think at that. And also the government put some pressure on government about data, access to the internet, broadband internet. I mean, those are basic building blocks. If you can just get electricity and building block, you know, broadband, right? But okay, the second thing is I just want to ask you. I mean, you use the word AI, but it's not AI. You're just using OpenAI's ChatGPT-4, which costs money. So this whole system is dependent on an international platform, right? So I just want us to stand back one step, because I mean, there are other models, and I mean, it is a vulnerability, right? So we're not using AI, we're using, for this example, OpenAI's ChatGPT-4, which you basically build an application on through advanced prompting, which is a very specific skill set. If we look at AI maturity and AI maturity assessment, we're talking about stuff much bigger than large language models. Okay, thanks.
Okay, I want to respond on that as well. So if you look at the framework that we're currently developing, we're looking at all of these different issues, from infrastructure to the biases of these systems. And I think this was a good example of how advanced these systems are and where some of us are with AI versus others not. So the framework is also then developed, or the AI readiness framework for South Africa is specifically developed to look at all of these different aspects. And to just get to your question on the Mzansi Med, So we are in conversation with the South African Health Product Regulatory Authority, where we will try to get it registered as a medical device. And then if it's registered as a medical device, it will be available in clinics, also hopefully in clinics in rural areas, if government then adopts it. So there's those things that we have developed and built into that as well. Okay. Question or answer?
I'd like to make if I may, shift the conversation slightly, just because I'm aware that we're coming to the end of our deliberations today quite soon. And I've been thinking about the function and the place, the nature of the document that is a document called Guidelines and Principles. And then I was very really intrigued, particularly by the last slide that you had where you presented a readiness framework. So I was wondering about, and I haven't been part of these kinds of discussions and planning deliberations, and I'm wondering if it's not perhaps important to make quite a strong difference between these kinds of documents, a readiness framework on the one hand, which tries to think about all the different aspects of the university's work, all the different units and communities, what the different kinds of work entail, its academic projects, its research projects, its administrative functions, etc. And guidelines and principles, which I would want to be so bold as to argue that those need to be fairly specific and speak to particular sectors of the university. So this document, which I know came sort of has a particular history and came from last year's, and in a sense it was put together, I think, in the aftermath of last year's colloquium, is called Guidelines and Principles, Fostering Innovation and Excellence Across UWC's Academic, Research, Professional and Administrative Domains. And I would respectfully suggest that it ends up being a very, containing very broad and generalized statements that would be difficult to apply to any of these specific domains. And in fact, the title is already a big mouthful necessarily, and it doesn't actually specifically mention learning and teaching. So I think that it would make much more sense to have a kind of a bottoms up process from our faculties, from our different kind of administrative units to develop guidelines that are specific to certain administrative and professional domains. So like at the moment, I find this document interesting and it's got very important, it makes a very important contribution, but it's not, doesn't feel like it's my document because I wasn't part of the making of it, even though I'm the learning and teaching specialist in my faculty. And that's simply because of how the important function of these sort of occasional workshops that we have as beginning points of thinking. But I think it's very important to think about how we actually involve the communities at our university so that the university-wide document that speaks to administration or teaching and learning, the process that makes that is one that involves us learning about the technologies and sort of creates buy-in as well.
I agree with that. There definitely needs to be further discussions on which policies we need and also for which specific faculties and maybe also for which specific disciplines within faculty as well. But I think what Juliette tried was just to have a general guideline for UWC for us to start this conversation, which is good. And now from now we get the feedback, and the more feedback we get, iterative process, the better the guidelines will become. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Jacques and our panelists. I think we're drawing to a close here. I'm not sure we can take any more questions, but I think to round this off and end up, can we just ask each of our presenters if you want to have a closing word or statement to end us off, rather than taking all of the questions that we do have. Tony, you can go down the line.
Thank you very much. A listener earlier asked, how can we invoke it in our first year? A short answer, give them the topic, let them explore it in ChatGPT. They will get different answers. The next day they come, they discuss it with each other. That's called collaboration because now they have some knowledge of it. And then it's also blended learning and flip classroom now. They are the center, and that's the best answer I can give them. to us, I just want to say, I was conservative earlier to say that this beast is growing much rapidly than what we can stop it with, turn it in or whatever. So I think we should think of how can we make friends with some parts of this beast, because you're either the windscreen or the bug, but this thing is moving. Thank you.
I didn't expect to this morning discover that I'd love to study pharmacy, that I'd love to study computer science. And so what I think that we need more occasions for where we from our different faculties get together. And it's really fascinating because we are thinking from a variety of angles about the same technological beasts, as it were. And so I'd like to thank all of all of the participants and my fellow panelists.
Thank you, Vanessa, for organizing this. I think it's wonderful, and to have all these voices. And I think the idea is a draft and then input into it. And then there was also a next phase, use cases. It's very important. And that then gets to the specifics. And that's what many universities are doing. Because when you start writing guidelines for each one, it's going to become very difficult. But when you add your use cases to the guidelines, the institutional guidelines, then we can have use cases from humanities, and they would be exemplars that are speaking to the guidelines, and that could also be then a way. So our next phase is now to collate use cases, and that would be important.
Yeah, thanks so much. This has been really eye-opening being here and presenting and just learning about what everyone's doing with AI. Just something from my side, I think, and I think some of my colleagues mentioned that the ground-up approach, I think, is very, very important. Okay, it's really, I feel it's really nice if you sort of, I wouldn't say specialize in AI, but you know, you have a special interest in it, you spend a lot of time with it. But I definitely think, and I think Jacques also did touch on it, we need to think about grassroots level, faculty, the administrative staff. And I think we should just be, just think about putting a little bit of extra focus there, because that's where the real work is going to come from. Thanks.
I was just thinking about COVID. Everyone realized the world was extremely flat when COVID happened. And it's far worse for me with technology. It spreads way faster. So in my mind, I just wanted to say that I'm biased because I want all of our students leaving this university to be able to use these tools to the best of their ability. So that's my bias I've got built in. And in a sense, also, since the world is flat and we are in a hyper competitive world, you need every single possible advantage that you can get to be viable into the future. And I think UWC should be at the forefront if they can, if we can.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a wonderful opportunity. Thank you for that. And thank you for this very good input right next to me from my colleague panelists. The one thing that I can just say is AI is not large language models. You have to be cognizant of all the other places where AI is intruding in our world. So it is already on Google's Gmail platforms. It is already everywhere where you actually interface with Google Apps. So don't think AI is large language models. It's already influencing many aspects of our world, and we're not even aware of it. But of course, large language models plays a big role, but we have to be also very aware of the vulnerabilities, because these platforms don't belong to South Africans. Okay, so what is the impact on the digital divide? But thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you. I've got not much more to add, but to say that I think we always just have to remember need and context. And I think we are early adopters, so I'm looking forward to the next version.
Thank you. And can we give everyone a round of applause, please? This was, yeah. I think this was wonderful, and I think it's time to do a vote of thanks. I first want to thank all of the faculties for pulling together, sending somebody, and just sharing just openly with everyone else. Thank you for the moderation, Jacques. Julia, thank you for starting this conversation in the first place with your guidelines. The Senate Academic Planning Committee, thank you to them and the chairperson, Prof. Levak, for identifying this opportunity and asking us to work with it. Institutional Advancement, Melody, thank you. You've done a great job. AVS team, my own colleagues in APU. I must say thank you to the funders. The UCDG grant is going to be what's going to keep us going with webinars and workshops and hearing voices. And also, I think the next step is really going to have to be to hear from students, to hear from our support units. So we're going to expand this process of hearing people's voices. And thank you everybody who was here today and for your contributions and just being that. And Fifi wants me to thank her personally for all her good questions. So thank you, Fifi. So thank you everyone for a lovely engagement. Thank you.